OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, we have one of the all-time busy shows for you with a star-studded lineup for you. Owen is here.
How are you?
And Kenny Cunningham is here.
Morning, lads.
Kenny, how are you?
Yeah, all good, all good.
What's going on?
Oh, this time in the morning, lads, very little.
Yeah,
very little, Scott.
You're
Gotta be honest with you.
not dressed in green. Will you be marching your traditional route tomorrow?
Like Alan?
Oh, yeah.
Just checked it out
Dressed
there.
up
I
in
didn't...
Paddy's
yeah, I'm trying to look at the emblem. What emblem? What
I actually don't know what it is, to be
oh,
honest.
right, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes, you do, Alan. To try and make it, you just threw that on when you got out of bed, and even... Me and Jay are now different.
Tends to be what happens.
Hours of grooming before he comes into the studio. we all know that. Unlike Jer, obviously.
Anyway, we were just having a random enough
That's
conversation.
a compliment, by the way. Owen.
Yeah, I've been taking it as one. Thank you, Kenny.
About St. Patrick's Day and the sporting action and the lack of sporting activity, and Owen was expressing some interest in your school's GAA career.
Yeah. Show us your medals. Show us your school's medals is what I was asking. The context for this, by the way, is that the school's finals run in
two school medals. Two school medals. I didn't bring up this conversation. I don't know how it came up about the GAA.
We were just chatting about St. Patrick's Day and how the GAA in Croke Park now is the schools rather than the clubs.
Right, gotcha, yeah. I think the point I was making initially was that it'd be good to have some live sport on Paddy's. I haven't been in Dublin for Paddy's Day in a long time, but I like the idea getting out of bed and heading down to whatever's your local venue and watching a bit, whether it's a bit of club GAA or county or whatever, and just taking in a bit of live sport just to break up the day a bit. Yeah, something about going to a bit of live sport. I think it's quite appealing. Paddy's Day, we know where it's going to end up. You know, we know where most people are going to end up on Paddy's Day, but
delay the inevitable.
Yeah, I think it's nice to get out there, just break up the day a bit. No,
are you a fan of the parade?
Yeah, but I'm saying I haven't been, because I grew up from having this conversation with me brother yesterday. I grew up in Dorset Street, so when the parade came up, kind of saying around Parnell Square, it kind of finished there. Do you know the Black Church?
Yeah.
You doing your little thing around North Dublin there, living your little walk. Yeah, there's a block of flats there. I don't know if it's Dorset Street Flats, what they're called. So we used to walk down. I lived off Blessing
Besides
Street.
St. Saviour's Boxing Club, is that where we are?
Yeah, not far, but we used to walk down from Blessing Street and walk into the flats onto the first or second level, and we used to get picked up and perched on the edge and just held there.
Michael Jackson style.
Pretty much so, yeah. Except there were about 50 kids in the same boat, like domino. It would have been a domino effect. If one kid had gone, about 50 would have gone. Anyhow, but that's where the parade finished. Just a Black Church there. People in the area would know it. So yeah, so that was we were lucky in that respect. We saw the whole parade come and finish. But now I haven't seen it. I haven't been Dublin. I've been in Dublin for it could be 30 years since I've been in Dublin on Paddy's Day.
Will you go to the parade, Owen?
I'll be in and around Dublin for sure. Whether or not I'll take in any of the parade remains to be seen.
Can you get a good view? Can you get? I can't be turning up and then it's, caught a bit of.
You need to know somebody who has a roof, who's looking down on one of the streets that goes down. Otherwise, it's like.
What about your pen? Where's your penthouse, Jerry?
Exactly. Yeah. I just know you're.
I couldn't be asked with that now.
You're jammed in with a bunch of people who are breathing all over you. Yeah,
I'm not too sure. The jury's out. I'm not. Haven't made my mind up now. I was thinking coming in for a few hours in the afternoon. Not sure it's going to be worth it though, is it?
Afternoon, it might be a little bit like a post-apocalyptic zombie takeover. Is it?
I'm hearing quite a lot of that. Is it as bad as that?
I don't know. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't anymore.
Too much messing going on. Is there? I can't be. There's too much messing. It's a shame. I can't be dealing with all of that.
Maybe the city has been reclaimed in the last couple of years because of COVID. We'll see. Let's get
live sport. That's my answer to it. Live sport.
That's definitely one answer. And speaking of zombies, Manchester United's season is over. Effectively, they can still. They can finish fourth. They can still finish.
Oh, it's not over.
They could
Retract.
go. Retract. I take it back. They will be trophyless. Cristiano Ronaldo's first trophyless season in 12 years.
Is that right? Yeah.
Poor Cristiano.
I felt sorry for him last night. I thought there was one moment, lads, just kind of sums up where he is in his career. Late on in the game, maybe 10-15 minutes to go. He picked the ball up about 10 yards outside their penalty box on the right hand side. I think he fronted up one of the Atletico centre halves, can't remember who it was, and he tried to knock it past him and run around him the other side, and
it didn't happen.
Yeah, it was just in terms of that acceleration now over 10, 15 yards, just nothing there at all. The defender didn't even have to work that hard to run backwards and take the ball off him. So just a small little snapshot where he is.
Stick your earphones in there for the first bit. We're going to listen to some of the post-match reaction. First off, here's David De Gea, pretty despondent, speaking to BT Sport.
No silverware again for another season for United. That's going to be 5 years now. It's not good enough for this club, is it?
Of course, it's not good enough. It's hard. It's hard for the club, for us, for the fans. It's really hard. This is where we are at the moment. Difficult situation, and we need to keep fighting, keep trying our best. But to be honest, it's a tough moment again. I feel sad. I feel for the fans as well and for everyone. But we are not good enough.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Short and sweet. Here's Ralph Rangnick, again, the interim boss, who's counting down the moments now until he's free from the burden of managing Manchester United. Here he is in the aftermath of their 1-0 defeat last night. Have a listen.
Well, I think we played a very good first half, exactly the way that we wanted to play. High energy level. Most of the game in the first half took place in their half. But unfortunately, we couldn't convert that energy into 1 or 2 goals. We hit the crossbar. We had another 1 or 2 good moments where we could have scored or should have scored, but we didn't. And then conceding that one counter-attacking goal short before half-time didn't make life any easier for us. And in the second half, it was difficult. I don't think that the game went for more than 3 minutes in a go. It was always interrupted, somebody lying on the floor. I think also some curious refereeing decisions. I wouldn't say in the end that they were decisive, but at least he fell too often for those time-wasting antics. And in the end, 4 minutes extra time was just a joke for me. But anyway, very good first half. Second half, again, was difficult to find a rhythm again.
Ralph Rangnick blaming the slightly dodgy foreigners for their time wasting and the referee at the end of it. He's settled right into Manchester United life. This is good.
There's a part truth in what he's saying, but fundamentally it's just lack of quality, lack of confidence in that Manchester United team just came out in the second half.
This is their level. They will get beaten by a team who aren't even playing very well at the moment, but who know more what their own identity is in Atletico, who have a manager who knows this is what we're supposed to do, this is how we're going to do it over 2 legs. We just need to be in this at the end, and we'll outlast them, because Manchester United aren't good enough at the moment. This is their level.
No, they're not. You could argue whether they're better than what they're shown at the moment. That's when that bit of confidence comes in. They probably just can't trust themselves, United. I still think they're fighting, in all honesty. You can't trust them in terms of what type of performance you're going to get out. And first half was decent enough. I'd agree with the manager there in terms of intensity, energy levels. Still think they're lacking a little bit in real kind of quality. Had a lot of the ball. We were in there half the pitch. That's where we wanted to be. Well, initially, of course, that's where you want to be initially, but then it's what you do, how creative you are when you get into that area of the pitch, and how good you are, your combinations, what you're actually looking to do. So United is still a bit short there. Probably that, again, it's all been said, isn't it? That's kind of central midfield area. If you look at their first goal, even the small, it wasn't the Llorente goal, the 2 goals actually, but even the Llorente goal that was disallowed just before the first goal. It's a great little combination play in the Atletico central midfield, Koke and DePaul, I think it is. The tight little area of the pitch under pressure. They play a little 1-2, bump around the corner,
which is exactly the same kind of not exactly the same, but the ability on the ball is exactly the same as the one that creates the chance in the end.
Yeah, exactly. But they get in behind the United midfield here, so it's just that little bit quiet, that central area of the pitch to work a bit of space, get somebody free, and then it's the ball in behind. First one was disallowed. Thought it was a great goal. Llorente just needed to check his run a bit before driving in behind, and then the second goal again, boom, quick passing. Little overload, not overcome, but quality there nevertheless.
So with the goal comes after a dispute about whether or not Elanga was fouled, and then Manchester United, Ronaldo in particular, is chasing the referee, and actually they're not organised enough. And as soon as that happens, Atletico know what they're about. They know the counter-attack is on and the ball goes down the pitch really quickly.
But it goes down with a bit of quality too. I think people talk down to Atletico too much. I mean, after the game, the black arts, and of course that's part of it, but you can't get away
coming.
But they don't.
You can't complain about it when you know it's coming.
Yeah,
that's why Rangnick pisses me off there, because it's like, Atletico Madrid under this manager are going to disrupt play and lie down and pretend they're injured. You know that's going to be the case.
Yeah, but that's a small facet. But that's a small facet of the game, Jared, isn't it? In terms of defensive organisation, how they defend their box, that low block is pretty impressive. To be honest with you, that's not like 10 players running around like kind of headless chickens after the ball trying to make tackles. They're kind of a cohesive unit in terms of how they defend, and even when they break out from that deep defensive shape, they do it with a little bit of quality. They're not just smash forward the yard long balls up the pitch for Griezmann and João Felix to chase. They look to play little 5-10 yard quick 1-2 passes to work their way up the pitch. So there's genuine, the point I'm trying to make is there's genuine quality there's a high technical level of ability there within the team. I wouldn't be a huge fan, maybe what Herrera for me would be a huge fan of. And I think back to when Koke played back in the day, and Saúl Ñíguez was at his very best in that central. But these lads can play 1-2 touch. And again, that United midfield, that engine room for United, you never feel as if Fred or McTominay can get on the ball on the half turn and play that clever little ball around the corner, that kind of eye of a needle pass. And that's not the only issue there. There's plenty more going on that we all kind of know about. But yeah, it all came undone a little bit. Had a bit of sympathy for. I've been there myself, to be honest with you. That frustration builds. You can sense it inside you. Just not good enough, this lot. They've got too much for us. You know what they're doing, spoil their taxis, but you can't do anything about it, really. The whole occasion kind of gets to you. The frustration boils up. Concentration wavers, the whole shebang. The game's getting away from you. You just feel as if there's nothing you can do about it.
I think it's like, it is worth lingering on the point that you made there. Another trophyless season for Manchester United. The first time since 1974 that they've gone 5 consecutive seasons without winning a trophy. And I just kind of was rewinding a little bit this morning to kind of remind ourselves of how big the fall off has been in this season alone. I feel sorry for Manchester United fans, because in a way we all as sports fans go into every season with this sense of naivety that it's we're going to win the title. Whoever you support or whatever your possible level is, you're going to think that we're going to reach that ceiling. But it wasn't just the Manchester United fans. It was the Manchester United players who thought they were going to win something this season. After they beat Wolves 1-0 at Molineux back in August, the day after the Ronaldo signing had been secured, you had got David De Gea and Paul Pogba speaking in front of Sky Sports saying, now is the time to win titles. Even if you go through some of the social media reaction to Ronaldo's signing, you had the likes of Marcus Rashford, for example, saying, wow, 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 he's home. Lingard saying, Viva Ronaldo. David De Gea with the blushing emoji. Bruno saying, Agent Bruno, welcome back home. Luke Shaw saying, I feel like it's given the club a massive lift, not just inside but outside. It's a big positive. He's one of the best players in the world, and he has been for the last number of years. David De Gea, in more longer quotes, said it's like a dream for all the Manchester United fans and for us to have him back. This was the level that Manchester United felt they were at back in August. So even though it's been a nightmare 10 years for them, I would say that in the context of one season, this has been the worst. This is definitely the lowest point, because they thought it was going to be one of the highest points in the post-Alex Ferguson era.
Yeah, there was a bit of good feel, good vibes around the club at that time. You're right. It was a decent finish to last season. Was the tour they finished in the league under Solskjaer at the end of last season? I think it might have been. But you're absolutely right. I remember a bit of that Veranda come in, didn't he, just prior to that Wolves game as well, and initially played
second
quite well.
Actually last season.
Yeah, second, excuse me, and it looked as if there was a partnership developing there between him and Harry Maguire. A lot of confidence around the team, everybody kind of talking things up. Never really felt it was going to be a title winning squad even then. You know what I mean? So you're saying about trophies.
Isn't good enough.
I never thought that team was going to win the league this year, potentially Champions League. But yeah, you could have argued, well, one of the domestic competitions. I don't know if that's. I never quite buy into the fact that, the argument's been a trophyless season, as if United had gone and stole the Carabao Cup this season. That negates everything else. That, where it's not as simple as that, is it? But those kind of basic fundamentals, I think, have always been there in terms of the lack of quality in certain areas of the pitch. But there has been a massive drop off in terms of the dressing room. The dressing room is obviously fractured a little bit. I think it's too simplistic to say Ronaldo coming into the dressing room has created that kind of schism in there. I don't think it's as simple.
But it gave them a sense that they could contend in Europe and in the Premier League, and all of a sudden everybody's like, right, we're ready to win now. And I definitely feel that was just another ingredient into the whole element of complacency that we've seen at times.
Yeah, but it's not like, I mean, at the moment there's I'm hearing a bit of like, oh, it's absolute mess.
I think it is.
Where do you even start trying to put this thing right?
I think this is
hold on.
Liverpool under Souness.
Are you one of these then? What direction?
Yeah.
How do we even... Look, it's not overly complicated in terms of the 4 steps you need to take going forward.
The only thing that can save Manchester United is Guardiola and Klopp leaving. Otherwise, they are staring down the barrel.
It depends what you mean by save.
They've got to win the league.
That's
the standards. They're Man United standards. You can't deny that Ferguson decided and injected into the club, if we don't win the league or the Champions League, it's actually a failure of a season. If they won the FA Cup, and they sacked the guy who won the FA Cup, Van Gaal won the cup, in the lift afterwards, he got sacked.
Yeah. No, it is possible. I don't agree with you that unless Guardiola and Klopp go into that football. If they went in now, they wouldn't bring a title. If Guardiola and Klopp went into Manchester United now...
No, my point is they have to leave their current jobs. The only thing that's going to save Man United and get them back to a level where they're going to win a league is if Klopp leaves Liverpool and Guardiola leaves City. That's what they can pray for.
It's interesting what you're saying, but no, it's not true. Obviously, somebody is capable of going in there with the right type of backing behind him. Yeah, Tuchel's a fair point. Pochettino. I think these type of managers who could go in there with the right type of backing in terms of player recruitment could have United. I'm not saying it's going to happen in 12 months, but over the next 2 to 3 years, potentially could arrive at a place where they're challenging Manchester City and Liverpool. I think that's actually possible.
Maybe.
And it's just the fundamentals. You get the right manager, get the right...
Big deal,
simple as that. Right manager and the right recruitment.
Okay, yeah.
The recruitment comes from the relationship between the manager and those people in around the board, wherever you want to title you want to give them, director of football, this, that, and the other, little committee, 1 to 2 person, whatever works. Just get your recruitment right, get the relationship right with the manager, but just fundamentally, that's the 4th step. Get the right manager in place, and you'd be surprised how big a jump forward you can take.
Yeah, okay. I agree with that. It's just
everything else, the dressing, split, everybody got their own agendas. That'll all change. Get the right manager in there, strong personality, organise the dressing room, clears out the dressing room, and then you're on your way. Gives the club, that's the bit of direction. That's the direction that you want. It comes from the manager.
Yeah, in fairness, if you look back at the team that Klopp inherited, like very few of those players are still very important first team, and that took time for him. And I mean, with Guardiola, it was slightly different in that it looked like he'd been influencing the transfer policy for a while, or certainly the gene pool that he came from had been influencing the transfer policy. But the job is a big job. You've got to get rid of, I don't know how many of that team you would actually say, yeah, I really want him in my team. Yeah, depending on what style of play you want.
Just get on with it then. Get on with it.
Yeah,
get the right manager in place and let him get on with it.
Have a listen to this. This is Paul Scholes talking about Rangnick in the aftermath of the game. Have a listen.
I think not only, but I think they're a top-class coach away from getting back to anything near where they should be. I think, you look at the group of players, it's not that bad. There's some good players, some talented players, but for the last 2 years, or maybe even longer, they've not had an elite coach. To be an elite coach of a big football club, you need to have special qualities. You need to be able to get a team to play you want them to play, which is the most important, the philosophy you bring into it. You have to have a manager that strikes fear into players. Alex Ferguson had that. Have any of the other ones that they've had since done that? I don't think they do. I don't think they have. That's a special talent to get them players to be a little bit of afraid of whenever they go out on a pitch, you're thinking, or even the training pitch, if I don't do what this manager wants me to do. You think them City players, them Liverpool players with Jurgen Klopp, they'll get away with nothing. These players here for the last 2 or 3 years have probably got away with murder. Yeah, so I only think they're a big coach away from... I'm not saying they're close to Liverpool and Manchester City. I don't think they're far away from Chelsea, squad-wise.
Yeah. I do think they're far away from Chelsea, squad-wise, to be honest. But he's saying what you were saying. Get on with it, get the right coach. It's just that they've screwed up the coach recruitment so badly over the last number of years. They gave Solskjaer another contract. Yeah. They hired Jose when the whole world knew that Jose's magic had disappeared. Van Gaal was such a random appointment who had not been great at club level in a senior important job in a long time. Do you know? Yeah. Their track record's not good.
So you can keep looking back and back, but it's all that matters is the next appointment. So just get it right, learn from your mistakes, look at the profile of the managers you want to bring in. There might be an argument for saying the coach we want to bring in is dependent on his style. I don't know, this seems to be the chat nowadays. This is how we want to play. This is our philosophy. We need to get a manager who fits this philosophy. I mean, that conversation was never had back in the day when I played. You brought in a manager to get you winning, to win football games. Now it seems to be a little different. You know, he has to tick the right amount of boxes in terms of how does he play? How does this manager play? Seems to be a big thing. Now, forget about many games that he wins. No, this is a philosophy that we want to see ingrained in the football club. So we have to get a manager who fits into that. So
Tuchel, Owen brought up Tuchel. We talked about it yesterday in the show. Of all of the potential available managers in the summer, is he the one you would go after hardest?
Oh, I'm a big fan of Pochettino. Personally, I think he's got him and his backroom staff. I think when Paul Scholes says about an elite coach, for me, it's about the coach and his support staff. Some outstanding managers out there, but don't actually spend a huge amount of time on the training pitch in terms of hands-on, in terms of the tactical maybe set up of the team, and spending too much time 1v1 with the players. They leave that to their support staff, and that's when you need a very strong support staff around you. There's always a bit of talk when Solskjaer left, the quality of the coaching staff around them, and that's true. That's important. If you're giving that responsibility to other people, if they're dealing with the players on a 1v1 basis, and these players are high profile, they better know their stuff. They better be winning those players over and bowling them over in terms of what they have to say, in terms of things that they're setting up on the training pitch. So it's not just the manager for me; it's the whole kind of management team, which is important. So I think Pochettino at this stage of his career now, I think he's ready. I think he's ready to step in. I think he'd be comfortable in that environment, and I think he'd get a lot of respect off the players. I liked how his teams have played. Not so much PSG, a bit of a madhouse over there. I don't think he can actually set them up ideally the way he wants because of the politics of that football club, who's got to play, etc. He wouldn't have that at Manchester United, and I think you'd see him lean back towards in terms of how that Spurs team played during his time there, and they played well in terms of the tactical setup of the team there, lads. They were very kind of flexible in terms of they went 4-3-3, they go a back three, kind of wing backs. He kind of flipped between the both. Whichever way they played, they were really kind of organised, tight knit unit, in and out possession, kind of high energy. Say high press. It's a cliche thing to say. Most teams go in high press, don't get me wrong, but they done it in a really kind of cohesive way, and they were very successful at it, and he got the most out of that group. That's the best I can say about at Spurs. He got everything out of that group of players generally, week in, week out. I think he could do the same. But Tuchel's a great. He wasn't even in the conversation, was he, a couple of months ago? But obviously circumstances at the moment looks as if there might be an option there getting him. If that was the case, yeah, absolutely. Would he be on the short list? Yeah, I think he would. He is that type again in terms of personality, and he's smart.
Would you rather, Pochettino or Tuchel?
Either. I have them both up there. I'm hugely impressed with Tuchel since he's come into Chelsea. He's very clear, even in terms of his pre-post match, when he's breaking things down, what he's presenting to people. Probably gives up too much information, to be honest with you, but he can see, he's very clear, precise. Okay. You can say that's how he deals with the players, gives them good information, well organised, and that little bit of, wouldn't say arrogance, but real kind of strength and personality as well.
All right, Tennis Tank on YouTube is giving out about Scholes putting the blame on the manager, not the players. And Peter G says the United talking heads are everywhere on TV. They're like the narrators of a Greek tragedy. This is what happened to Liverpool. This is exactly what happened to Liverpool, where their great team of the 80s all became TV pundits, and week on week were giving out about the team afterwards, when it was Roy Evans and Souness and Houllier and whoever. And those teams obviously always inevitably fell short, all the way up to even Benitez fell short, but he did win a Champions League, so maybe that's what United can hope for.
I think it's fair, isn't it? Could you say there wasn't too much there in what Paul Scholes had to say? I thought, that's outrageous in terms of what he said. He actually tried to back up he actually tried to give support the players there a little bit as well. I think there's a really good squad.
Yeah, but that's not right. But that's not right.
Yeah, but that's not third. That's
the
not
players
really
are on the field, and the players have to take responsibility for this. Okay.
Yeah, so, but you've made the point there about ex-Manchester United players jumping on the manager and beating him up. If you're saying it's
they defended Solskjaer.
Stand up.
They defended Solskjaer until he was over.
Well, that's a little bit different. That's the opposite argument.
Yeah.
Now you're saying that's the opposite argument. They're looking after.
Well, they were.
Now I can understand that. Yeah, I think they were.
And
that's a natural thing, Jerry. You probably do the same. Well, Owen jumped across.
He throws me under the bus.
Took a big page increase from other radio station and whatever. There'd still be a little bit of warmth between you.
No.
You still have his back.
There is no warmth.
You still have
now.
his back, Jerry, wouldn't you? So I can understand.
We're colleagues, not acquaintances.
So the salt score thing and the United lads, do you know what? I don't mind saying that, because that tells me, do you know what? Even after all that time they've been apart, they've been out of the dressing room forever. It's 15 years, that group of players. Still a little bit of a... The natural reaction is still to defend their mate a little bit. And it's in a funny way... I like to say it. But you're right in what you're saying. Yeah. It's very difficult to be objective. But that's not the point you originally made. I've got to be honest with you.
I'm making multiple points.
The opposite.
It's a hive mind here. Colin Madon on YouTube says no manager will get those players to win the league. Atletico pressed Maguire every time he was on the ball. How he's playing with, never mind captain of United, mass player clear out needed, he says. One last point on this. Could he be, if Tuchel arrived, could he be saved in the back three the way, like, the lack of pace that Thiago Silva has isn't an issue for Chelsea because he's surrounded with pace and the manager is really smart and knows exactly what he's supposed to do? Is there a recuperation that somebody like Thomas Tuchel can save Harry Maguire and not be a complete waste of the 80 million they've spent?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. You have to look at his qualities and think, do they outweigh maybe those small weaknesses in his game? So when you look at the qualities, you look at how dominant he is in the air, you look at his football and ability. Are you going to play in a manner in which you're going to ask, you're talking about a back three, your middle defender, to get on the ball and instigate your attacks, to kind of drive into midfield and be the launch pad for attacks from the back? If you are, then you're saying, well, maybe I can integrate this fella then into the team. I've got to protect them from the sides. I might have to play a lower defensive block, protect them in behind a little bit, all those things. So they're little things you have to kind of marry up. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you, Tuchel, when he looks at Maguire, he'd come to that conclusion. I just think that lack of mobility, kind of athleticism, and just in terms of where he is, I think mentally at the moment, he looks to be absolutely shot. Almost comes a point with a player you feel as if... it'd probably be in his best interest.
Send him back to Leicester, clubs. Try and get 20 million.
Well, they've taken Vestergaard from Southampton for 24. He's probably as clunky as Harry Maguire, and he can't get his way into the Leicester team either. So yeah, I feel as if you're right, Jared. There's an argument for in terms of can we get the best out of him, protect him at the same time. But I just feel as if at those top, how many of those top clubs, you look at Liverpool's back to like two centre halves, you look at the Manchester cities, others that you've mentioned, who carries somebody in the central defence, one or two of those players with those kind of deficient, particularly in terms of mobility and speed.
Thiago Silva's success at Chelsea is a bit mad. It is a bit mad.
He hasn't got much. He's on his last legs, to be fair.
He is on his last legs, but he's been on his last legs the whole time since he arrived.
But he's smart. He is smart.
I'm way over time. 7:57 this morning. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We've got Kenny with us all morning. Keith Wood is going to join us at 8:15 to preview the Scotland game. We've got the sports pages, 8:35. Tommy Walsh going to join us at 8:45. Andy Mitten at 9, talking Cheltenham at 9:10, bringing you some Brian O'Driscoll goodness at 9:30. John Duggan with the Cheltenham tips your way at 9:10 this morning. It doesn't matter who they get in a year's time, the media will be spinning it as the wrong decision, like they're doing with Conte now, says Richard Redballs. I don't think anybody thinks it was a bad decision for Spurs to get Conte in. It's just that who knows where it's going to go. The new manager needs to be allowed to bring in his own coaching team. There are still coaches there from the days of Mourinho. I don't think he can bring in 50 coaches. Like, there are 50 coaches working at Manchester United at the various levels, so he's got to bring his first team squad in. But I don't know, are there any of the first team people there who were actual Mourinho appointments as opposed to players who come through the club? We do want to talk about sorry, I'm going to give you an opportunity to win first before we get to Arsenal-Liverpool. So get your Arsenal-Liverpool talking points ready for us there. And right, competition time. This is exciting. We've got 2 pairs of tickets to give away today across OTB Sports to Ireland against Scotland in the Aviva Stadium on Saturday afternoon. It's all thanks to Aldi, official fresh food partner to Irish Rugby, who this month launched Play With Your Food with the IRFU. New research by Aldi has shown that over 40% of Irish kids do not eat fruit and vegetables every day. Who has 60% of kids are eating fruit and vegetables? I am astounded.
Fruit and no fruit or veg.
Yeah, do not eat fruit.
Because those fruit shoots, do they come into... They go down.
I don't think they count. Play With Your Food encourages kids to think differently about how they consume fruit and veg.
Like beans.
Legumes. Legumes.
No, it says 1 of your 5 a day on the packet of beans these days, doesn't it?
There you go.
The game is sold out. If you want to get your hands on the last pair of tickets for the match, stay tuned to enter our competition and be in with a chance of winning the pair of tickets to Ireland-Scotland. You have to do the following. Follow OTB on TikTok. It is @off_the_ball. That's our handle. Snappy. Like our latest video and comment from our code word Finn Russell to enter that code word with Finn Russell. We'll pick a winner at random later today and get those tickets to you. Just make sure you're following the OTB TikTok account because we can't DM you for details unless you're following us. Right, let's talk Liverpool and Arsenal. Owen has fears, strong fears, that even victory tonight, if they're inspired by the wrong player to victory, will in the long term be a defeat. Explain your thinking.
Well, like I know it's like years old and I hate to keep doing Game of Thrones references, but wasn't there a situation where Tyrion found the love of his life and it turned out that his father was actually in love with her instead and stole her away from him, and it was quite a brutal scenario where the father gets killed by Tyrion in the end. I'm not sure if Arsenal will have that sort of level of revenge, but I just wonder, is there
I'm struggling with the comparison, to be honest with you.
Remnants of 2008, 2009 coming back to Arsenal here, where the loves of their life are going to be stolen, Kenny.
Keep going.
They will be stolen.
Keep going
away.
on, keep going.
They will steal away with
Out of the mist.
an elder.
This is Kevin Kilban explaining the Nations League here.
Yeah. See,
There's a thing called Oedipus, where, have you heard of that?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a bit grim for this hour of the morning, but
it is.
You know, it falls in love with the mother, ends up killing his father.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, let's go with that one. Let's go with that one, but I'm not sure about
Let's go with anything, basically.
Okay, let's talk football.
I'm not sure about the killing part at the end. So basically, Jurgen Klopp likes Gabriel Martinelli, and I'm very afraid that Liverpool will sign Gabriel Martinelli. Discuss.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Thanks for that bit of clarity, Alan, at the end of it. Has that been mentioned in the dispatches, is it?
Well, the potential links haven't been mentioned. All you can go on is Jurgen Klopp's actual words about Gabriel Martinelli, describing him as a talent of the century in 2019. The League Cup, obviously, that Liverpool dumped Arsenal out of a couple of months ago. He says that everybody should remember the name. Little Martinelli, we will talk about this player in the future. If he'll be without major injuries, he'll have a proper career. He called him an outstanding player. Obviously, I mean, maybe there's some sort of loyalty to Edu for spotting him and bringing him over. But I think, as we've seen in the past, if a bigger club comes in for an Arsenal player, they don't tend to hang around too long. Things are different now. They're moving in the right direction. But my fear is not so much this summer. My fear is that if Arsenal don't get top four this year, then there is a massive deal of pressure on the club to get top four this time next year, because then you're in a situation where Saka and Smith Rowe and Martinelli are all 1 year later in their contract. They're all 1 year older. They're all 1 year down the line and away from not winning the Premier League title or from the Champions League title. And I fear that there may be a crossroads coming again, just like Arsenal were in the end game of Wenger, where they couldn't push for those titles and they started to lose those players who could help Manchester United and Manchester City, for example, win those titles.
Yeah. That's always going to be the case, and you're right in terms of some of the young talent at the club. It's as good as probably not. Actually, it's probably the strongest pool of young talent that I can think of. I could argue maybe Pedri and Gavia and Ansu Fati in the Barcelona. But even like Manchester City, yeah. But in terms of the age profile of those players, Martinelli, you've mentioned, Smith Rowe, and Saka, the ones we're talking about in particular. Odegaard, you'd put in that category as well, but he's come in for big money, so you know you'd have to reference that. But that's as good as anything around, and you're absolutely right. Keeping those players, getting them under a long contract is going to be the biggest challenge in facing Arsenal going forward. And you're probably right on those individual players will be looking at Arsenal saying, well, can I fulfil my ambitions here in terms of challenging for the title, playing Champions League football? You're absolutely right. Year in, year out, I think that'll be important this season if they can steal that fourth spot. That might encourage one or two of those younger players to extend their contracts, because that's going to be huge for Arsenal if they're going to bridge that gap to the top kind of three. They've got to build a team around that young cabal of young players which they have. Personally, I think Saka for me is the outstanding talent of them. I wouldn't agree with him in terms of Martinelli. Martinelli's an interesting one. When he first broke into the Arsenal team, people forget he played a couple of games actually down the middle as a central striker and caught the eye. Now he's come back into the team and he's playing kind of left of a three and obviously doing well there. Still think potentially maybe he could step into a central area. He could maybe solve one or two of Arsenal's problems playing down the middle. I wonder if Arteta looks at him and sees potentially he could save me 50 million the transfer market by actually playing down the middle of the pitch. But Saka for me is the one, head and shoulders, absolutely out. That kid could play any club in the top clubs in the world. He could walk into PSG, Real Madrid at the moment, even Manchester City, and absolutely be seamless to transition playing in that environment. He's that good.
No, the one thing is, I will kind of like completely say here that it is utter paranoia. If we look at the evidence here, the only person who is out of contract in that cabal of young players that you mentioned there in 2024 is Saka, and we know that Arsenal are working on getting a new contract, which is going to be worth a lot of money to Saka to get him beyond 2024. So all of a sudden then the 2023 window isn't as important as my paranoia just pointed out there, because Smith Rowe is 2026, Martinelli is 2025, I think.
Right.
And I think Odegaard is...
Said on transfer market is 24, Martinelli, when I checked this morning.
I'm seeing 2025 on...
Are you saying his contract's up? Are you saying when his contract's up, or...?
Yeah, when his contract's up.
Yeah.
So like 1 year out, you'd obviously have
right.
have to cash
But they're in good shape then. They're in good shape.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying it's just paranoia. But also on top of that, if something goes wrong in one of these contracts and they do have to cash in, or they're forced to cash in a little bit, it does seem that the recruitment last summer has been good, that if they got a massive windfall off a player, they could recover relatively well. As long as they don't have a fire sale, as long as they don't lose everybody, they could recover from a little bit of a transfer market setback.
No, I personally think they need to keep those players and add to it. I think that I don't think that squad. I think they could pinch forward position for obvious reasons this season, but next year I don't think the squad as it is actually strong enough to remain in that position. I think they need to strengthen. The squad's not deep enough. That's obvious. And I even think in certain areas of the pitch, still even think centre midfield. If you're going to be committed to Granit Xhaka in centre midfield for the majority of the season, still think he can do better there. And the centre forward position is absolutely huge. I don't know what's going to happen. It's a big decision to make with Lacazette. You're talking about out of contract. He's out of contract in the summer. I think they've had the best of him, Lacazette. I think he's only heading one way over the next 2 to 3 years. My gut feeling tells me let him go in the summer. He's on a free transfer. Get him off the wage bill and go and buy big. They tried to do it in the window. Tried to get Vlahovic in. I thought it was a good fit. Couldn't get him. They need to go and spend the money, maybe not just on one. They need to make a decision then in terms of whether Eddie Nketiah is good enough to play as a number 2.
Also out of contract this summer.
Our contracts as well. And if they don't look at him and think he can't lead the line for a period of time if we need him, then they got to get money for him. Now people have paid 20-30 million for him, and then you almost got to go and get 2 centre forwards. With the proviso that I said that you don't feel as if Martinelli maybe can come in and play in that central area. So they're the positions for me they basically need to keep what they have on, but they also need to strengthen if they're going to maintain that challenge for a top 4 and very slowly begin to eat in to those 3 teams above them. But they're in a good place. I mean, that's not a negative.
No question. No, it's just pure goals from the past speaking here, and it turns out it takes a while.
They've got a good manager now.
But they've
got a good manager now.
Turns out that way, yeah. And that was definitely
them a while, and it's taken them a while, isn't it? You're talking about new manager coming in, match Klopp, the amount of time it took him there in terms of coming in, clearing the dressing room, preaching his mantra, getting people buy in, and all of a sudden over a period of time, whoosh, gets ingrained, and you're on your way. It feels of Arsenal a little bit there at the moment. You watched them play the game I watched, the last game they played the other night. What was the game they played the other night?
They beat Watford or the one after that?
Yeah, kind of.
Leicester City on Sunday.
Yeah, Matt. Last Sunday.
Yeah, they beat Leicester on
yeah,
Sunday.
Leicester, excuse me, I was covering the game. Yeah, Leicester, yeah. But you look at them play, when they're playing out from the back, it's almost like it's computer game stuff now in terms of the split, players understanding where they need to be, when to play 1-2 touch, playing around the corner, knowing where players are. You know what I mean? They're really playing at a good level now. There's a real kind of game understanding in terms of how they want to play and how the manager wants them to play, and they're being quite successful with it. Now individually they can improve around the pitch, but they are in a really good place. That's such a dangerous game for Liverpool tonight. Liverpool are really going to have to be sharp tonight. Not so much sharp in terms of their attack and play, Liverpool, but switched on really our possession in terms of like counter attack because of the quality of those players that we've mentioned, particularly on the counter. Saka, Martinelli's absolutely rapid, isn't he? Odegaard looks as if he'll play. Smith Rowe can't even get into the team at the moment. But Arsenal are very dangerous at the moment. Liverpool aren't going to tiptoe their way through this game tonight in terms of 60-70%, you know what I mean, and playing maybe phases. You know, Arsenal playing with a lot of confidence at the moment. I'm really looking forward to the game.
Liverpool, do you make them title favourites if they win tonight?
Yeah. I think they're close to being there now anyway.
Right.
To be honest with you, yeah. Hasn't surprised me. I don't know, I probably didn't speak to you. It was maybe about a month or so ago, 3-4 weeks. Just felt as if Liverpool were primed to go. And to be honest with you, I'd have been surprised if they hadn't. But this isn't shouldn't be a surprise that Liverpool suddenly now are breathing down the necks of Manchester City. Just in terms, they've just got on a bit of a run. Players back, squad top heavy, everybody hungry. Just felt as if right, here we go, they're just putting a charge in here. So no, it hasn't surprised me. It looks as if Manchester City will hang around, so we should have a nice to and fro right up until the end of the season. But no, Liverpool are in a great place at the moment.
Liverpool hammered them in November in the game at Anfield. It was 4-0, and it wasn't close. It didn't feel close. It really felt like this is an exposure of where Arsenal need to get to. But since then, Arsenal have obviously had form and a settled selection and decided what their best team is.
Yeah. We've also got the Carabao Cup in the middle of that as well, where Liverpool exposed Arsenal again, and Arsenal were almost celebrating with the 0-0 the first day out, which in fairness was a good result in the context of things, but there was a gulf in those 3 games so far this season.
But even like Arsenal defence, that back 4 unit now stabilised. They've actually got a partnership now centre half. You know, you could kind of hang your hat onto a point. Still have small reservations about Gabriel, but he's improved this season. His in partnership with Ben White, he's been a stabilising influence there. Ben White, huge amount of money. You're talking about money well spent. Yeah, he's a good player to bring in. He has improved the team, but that's a huge amount of money, 50 million. But he has held. Tierney is obviously top class. Left back Tomiyasu will come back in. Ramsdale, maybe a couple of question marks. People, it's a slight gamble bringing this lad in, playing with a huge amount of confidence, and then that confidence runs through the whole team. So even the defensive setup now, that kind of screening from Partey, like an animal in midfield, getting around, making tackles, breaking things up, getting on the ball, charging forward, scoring goals at the weekend, that bit of all action. So, well, that's what I'm saying. That's a big step up in terms of, so that helps in terms of the defensive solidity, which has always been an issue as well for Arsenal. That's looking a lot stronger now as well as to what we've been talking about in terms of their attacking quality. So yeah, hence the reasons they're in a good position.
Aubameyang started that game and played the full 90 minutes against Liverpool the last time. Things have changed. That was important.
I still have him.
No.
I still have him there at the football club. I've got to be honest with you. This is where I disagree a little bit in terms of Arteta. So I'm talking about Lacazette at the moment. I don't think he's the best fit there at the moment. I think they could do better. And for me, Aubameyang was better. Now you could argue attitude and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's important.
So now we're getting back to managing players. Now you talk about you've talked up Tuchel, next Manchester United manager. He's got all the attributes, ticks all the boxes, strong person, the whole shebang. So what was his attitude to Aubameyang when he had him at Dortmund? How did he handle him when these situations presented themselves, arriving 2 minutes late for the meeting, or coming down and missing a breakfast, and all being in a bit of a tiz and that? How did he handle it? Did he give him did he fine him? Did he ostracise him from the group? Did he publicly humiliate him? This ain't good enough. No, he handled him a different way. He understood, right, this fella, it's innate in the moment in his nature. I'm not going to fight him, but he's loved in the dressing room. The players love him. There's not an issue there. He elevates the team and makes the team better. So I'm going to suck it up, and that's how he handled Aubameyang. He said he was great at the training pitch, good trainer, brilliant player, but obviously had these issues in terms of timekeeping, whatever you want to call it. But he handled it differently, and he got the very best out of him. Arteta's gone a different road. He's out the door now, and he's kind of, we'll see how he goes at Barcelona. He's having a decent spell there at the moment, so time will tell. I think he can have both. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I'm more Arteta to a certain extent in terms of discipline, the dress, and this is how things have to be.
How do you square we've got one of the best batches of young players in the world, and we're also going to have someone who seems to be jetting off, missing training, is our captain, and is supposed to be a leader, and he's setting a really bad example.
All about the dressing room. The specifics are important, but if you're talking about a bit of late keeping, for me, I'd never a big issue with late people turning in. It was never a big issue for me. They came onto the training pitch, they kind of trained well, they turned up on Saturday and played. I had absolutely no problem with that. So for me, it's not how I feel like I'm a disciplinarian, it's how I'm perceived. If I let this go, I need to be seen to be strong. For me, my first thought would be, it's about the dressing room. What effect does that have on the dressing room? How is he being perceived by the other players? And if the other players look at him and think, we just love this fella, we want him, we know how good he is, a lovely fella, we love his company, and he's a huge asset to the dressing room. For me, do you really want to go and burn all your bridges by coming with a heavy hand and ostracising for the group and literally actually pushing them out of the dressing room? That's interesting. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think you can have both of those things. And I think the very best managers, and I think Tuchel's up there at the moment, this is how he handled them at Dortmund. He got the very best out of them. Now I like that style of management rather than potentially kind of the hard hand which Arteta's come with.
Yeah, look, I get the point you're making. I do think that probably there's a significant difference between the Dortmund dressing room at that stage, when you had a bunch of seasoned players who had won the Bundesliga under Klopp, and this current squad at Arsenal who you're trying to get to be the hard-working team that presses the way that.
But hard. That's the difference. If he's hard, if he takes that onto the training pitch, he's sloppy in terms of his training. He's not working
or not showing up.
Bad hours. No, showing up's a little bit different. Like, you're trying to make out he was on a private aircraft over to south of France
it wasn't
Las
authorised
Vegas
trip. He was allowed to go. He just returned late from it. Like the one thing I would say is that like there seems to be a very big difference between how Lacazette and his role is perceived in the dressing room compared to how Aubameyang's role was perceived. And it feels that as if Lacazette is kind of like the dad of that squad at the moment. Like he's the old guy, and also even the way he plays, where he brings those amazing youngsters into play around him, kind of just as emblematic of his role in the dressing room at the moment.
All right, we'll let the listeners can decide. Yeah, you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream for us, or you can always tweet us at Off The Ball AM. And OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Still to come, hurling with Tommy Walsh. We've got John Duggan at Cheltenham. We'll talk to Andy Mitten in Manchester. But next, Keith Wood joins us.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Mike Keeley was brilliant again. He's so unselfish in his work.
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
If you look at Munster's stats against the Dragons at the weekend, the one thing that really jumped out at me is 241 passes.
Gavin Coombs goes into the second row in the second half, and is that an option going forward?
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
Kerry, we're missing Shawnee, right? I'm saying the importance of a number 11. Kerry's number 11 is probably the best in the business. Like, that's going to be a huge addition for them. Also missing Gainey, Paul Murphy, Gavin White and Moran. Like, there's a lot of strength to come into Kerry.
The Kerry people not usually try and play down their chances winning the Ireland. Are you putting them in as red hot favourites here?
What's the opposite of a Yera?
I'm matching up Mayo.
You're going off piece here, Jimmy. The lads are going to be answering. Jacko's ringing you there in the background.
He's not in the WhatsApp group yet. Are you not in the WhatsApp group yet? No.
I think though that Mayo nearly came out of the weekend looking a bit better. Do you know, they were nearly saying,
yeah, no, that probably is the consensus. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, Kerry have a bit of work to do, but they have a couple of top fellas to come back in.
Okay.
And that game, I was watching that game with a view to the summer.
You were watching that game in Ventry, in Paddy O'Shea's. That's where you were watching that game.
He wasn't watching the game at all.
With a view to the summer.
You were 15 points deep.
Right. What's going on, Owen?
James, you gotta cool the jets here. What are you doing?
15 points, that's old school.
It's a secret. It's a secret that Kerry are good at football.
Number one in the power rankings. And now James O'Donoghue, on this week's edition of the Football Pod, has laid the truth out. They have strength in depth. They have the best number 11 in the country. They've got the best inside forward in the country. They have the northern genius, the tactical masterclass to get the defence up and running. That's episode 8 of season 2 of the Football Pod. It's available to listen right now on podcast. You can subscribe and listen in the Football Pod feed, or you'll get it if you subscribe to OTB GA. And we are aware that there are some teething issues with some old feeds on various podcast platforms. If you're a Pocket Cast user, we apologise to you, but we're getting that rectified. You will get all our podcasts available on the OTB Sports app as it stands now. And you'll also get the latest episode of the Hurling Pod, Tom Parsons, Donal O'Neill, and later today Tommy Walsh. And we're finished chatting to him later on OTB AM. You'll get that in our GA feed as well. In the meantime, Keith Wood is here. Keith, good morning to you.
Good morning, gents. How are you?
We need to cheat more. That was the conclusion yesterday when we were talking about the front row with Mike Ross. He was talking about England. We were like, what do you do when England are doing what they're doing? Because it's no good crying about it after a World Cup semi-final or a World Cup quarter-final if somebody does to it. And he plainly says, well, I'd like us to cheat a bit more.
Yeah, I can't really. It's not exactly one of the virtues of the game that we would extol too often, but I couldn't help but agree with him. It's funny, I was looking at it and I could see Furlong complaining, and I don't think you can criticise Genge for a strategy that worked very well. There was a tiny little bit of a push after the engagement, but it was also the crab on the outside. And actually, if you could see a little bit on the overhead, Jamie George is an incredibly butty hooker, and he was just going directly across and down on top of the right shoulder of Sheehan, and putting a huge amount of pressure through there. And to be honest, Sheehan hasn't played a huge amount of rugby, so this is a fairly steep learning curve for him. But I think Furlong should have loosened his bind a lot, and pretty much put his arse out and drive in, or else let Genge go and let him go and walk around the outside, because we were suckered consistently. I mean, the first scrum was brilliant, but after that, we were suckered in nearly every scrum.
So a couple of things, right? The technicalities of what you're talking about are fairly obvious. Is there anything else you can do as a captain in the past to influence the referee to like just break the pattern of vision that the referee has, where he's saying, no, you're getting killed, stop complaining? That in his head, maybe he knows what he's talking about, maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about, maybe he's an expert on it and has just decided that, well, all's fair in love. I don't know. But what can you do to influence the outcome when it's going against you like that, apart from the change in the technicalities? Is there anything you can verbalise to say, hang on a second, this is nonsense?
Well, in fairness to Renal, I think he's a very good ref. I thought he reffed pretty well. At scrum time, I think he was suckered as much as we were. But yes, you do have a conversation with it, but it can't be constant, because that just drives the referee mad. And to be honest, the ref didn't have a huge amount of interest in having a conversation about it. The one time he did take the two props out, what he actually explained was exactly right. But a lot of the French refs will give it to the team that's going forward. That's just part and parcel of the way it's reffed in France an awful lot. So in my belief, I think you have to take things into your own hands. So you either collapse some of the scrums, you either, as I said, loosen the bind, and that means there's an awful lot that's required for that. But in terms of getting the referee to change his mind with it, you have to paint a different picture, and the same picture was being painted for the whole game. So Dan Sheehan's a really big hooker. Sometimes you just need to leave the tight head alone, and his right shoulder is very high. If it's very high and you have a smaller hooker against you, that can put you under huge pressure. And once there's any bit of movement on the tight head side, you can just be shunted out of position very quickly. And that's what it seemed to happen to me. And look, I would know 90% of what happens in the front row, and you're still trying to guess it. Now, I was at the game and I couldn't quite see it, but I went through it again yesterday. And but I felt there was a tiny crab, and I'd have said to Furlong, it's you're the senior guy, you take over. And if that means you go in to blitz, to absolutely blitz them and push them back, that's maybe the only way you can change that view for the referee, that if you attack them, let Genge go on the outside. But it's much easier said than done.
And was that also harder to do without James Ryan? Or, I mean, should they still have been able to do that with Henderson packing down? Because it's not like Henderson's small.
Yeah, we seemed totally off balance on the right-hand side of the scrum. So whether that was the change of James Ryan coming or going off or whatever, I don't know. But I do know that we haven't seen that much of that being got away with in international rugby. And like that crabbing is one of the issues that can happen when you don't get a good hit in the scrum, and there's no hits allowed anymore. So I'm surprised it's taken this long for that to happen.
You were saying you were there, Keith, and then you watched it back, and it's only, I suppose, on rewatch when you start to appreciate these things. I assume as a player it's hard to spot them as well when you're right in the middle of it. So is it down to the coaching staff to get a message out there when they start to see these trends emerge early in a game?
No, front row have to sort that out for themselves. Yeah.
And can you feel it, or clearly you're saying that you have to...
Well, look, I can give the view that Dan Sheehan would have been inside there. He I think we mentioned this a few weeks ago about big hookers, but sometimes you need to get yourself locked into a position where you can't be lifted. And that means loosening your bind with your right hand, which is counterintuitive because everybody talks about the tightness in the front row. And you drop your right shoulder down as low as you can and get yourself into a good position. It becomes very hard to be lifted up and walked around. And so once you're in a bad position at the start, that makes it very hard. But for me, it's furlongs to do and deal with, And don't you know, you could see it on his face, but don't you know it when he woke up on Sunday morning and Monday, his pride would have been fairly heavily battered after that. And he is one of the top proponents of tight heads in the world. So I'd expect him to come back with an awful lot smarter version come the weekend. But again, we haven't seen as much of it as of late because there is no hit.
Yeah.
And I do think it could be a little bit as a coaching reaction to the handbrake that was put on for the scrum at the start of the season.
Well, one thing that struck me was, Irish rugby got scarred by the poor performance of Tom Court, who I have a lot of sympathy for and who years afterwards spoke about not being prepared for it and kind of being in the wrong position at a game in Twickenham, and it kind of set off an Operation Prop where, we're beginning to see the fruits of it a decade later. This isn't the same scenario here at all, really. What we're saying is that this group will actually be able to learn, and it's great to be doing it from a situation where we've won a match double scores. It's not ideal that this has happened, but it's great that it's happened now, as opposed to, as I said earlier, in a World Cup quarter-final or semi-final, and afterwards we're out.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree with you more. I thought it was a fantastic game of rugby. I've been a little bit taken aback by some of the criticism that's been in there to get the win, and the 4 tries in Twickenham is pretty phenomenal. And I know they're down to 14 players, but I thought England tried. I thought England played brilliantly. I thought some of their players were truly phenomenal. I thought that they didn't try and play any rugby. They did a little bit for a few minutes and then stopped. And they tried to play a style that would keep them into a game and maybe get them over the game. And I thought it was fantastic. But I also thought that, there's something incredibly gratifying watching an Irish team making mistakes, but still willing to go for it again under the highest pressurised set of defence. And the fact that Ireland continue to play like that and offload and wrap around and have runners in as much places, and it was by no means perfect. There were an awful lot of mistakes. Some of them were, but I would have said the decision making was right. I just think the technique was wrong. Some of the passing, a lot of the passing was behind, which was poor. Some of the passing was end over end, which is hard to catch. Some of the penalties that were given away were downright stupid. But if you ignore those, the style of playing and running it had England out on their feet in the last 10 minutes. And we thought when the bench came on, they came on fresh and came on with a guide from the coach to say, box kick it, get into the right position, slow it down in our half, speed it up in their half. That's exactly what happened, and the results turned out to be fantastic.
It would be great to see what would have happened if it had been 15, but we don't get that. It feels like the commitment to the game plan is absolute, and under the pressure when it got to 15-all and the England rugby team are channeling their inner John Millans and ripping their jerseys and shouting and celebrating the free kicks, it's like it was amazing. Like that atmosphere was incredible, and for us to just continue doing the new game plan and then be the new Ireland, that must be the most gratifying thing for the coaching ticket and for the players then to have confidence. So it's not just that we beat 14 men, it's that we actually went through a bit of fire in the middle of it and came out the right side as we should have done. It feels like it's a little bit more symbolic and confidence building than if we just won a game 19-16 on penalties.
Well, there's a couple of things for me on that. On 72 minutes, Jack Conan scored a try. That's as good a try as you're going to see anywhere. The amount of phases, the amount of hands that ball went through, the lines that were cut, the spread from side to side to side. But it was on 72 minutes after we were under the cosh was pretty fantastic. Look, for me, this is part of a process to change to something else. The risk that was taken with the passes. So the criticisms I'll have, let's go for a few of those first. Running into contact without the ball in two hands meant 3 or 4 of the balls that were spilt were because there were offloads with one hand under a lot of pressure. Well, we know if we play an offloading game in the future, and we try and play it as much as we do now, every single team will attack us. If we don't get that piece of technique right, that the ball is held in two hands, balls will be spilled all the time. So that's something that has to change. Some of the penalties that we gave away, hands in the ruck, hands in the line out, offsides, they're stupid penalties. If you're giving away a penalty, they need to be doing something of value. None of those were. But still, I'd go back to the idea that they want to offload constantly. It's fantastic. And we're going to make mistakes with it. You know, we're not used to this game at all. And we're only doing it for maybe 6 months. And a lot of these guys are 28, 29 or 35 or 36. So this isn't something they've been doing that they fall back on all the time. So, look, I love that idea that they wanted to keep going for it. I thought they were pragmatic. I thought Conor Murray, when he came on, I thought Gibson Park was brilliant. I didn't think he was man of the match, but I thought he was brilliant. I thought Conor Murray came on and played an entirely different style, but played it really well. So he kicked very well, but also he passed very quickly. I thought his pass for like a missed pass on the line to Caelan Doris or to Jack Conan for the try was excellent. But like for me, it was exciting. In the crowd, it was exciting. And I can tell you how exciting it was once we got that first try over when Conan scored. Loads of the English players or English fans left. They all started streaming out of the ground. They'd had their chance, they knew it was gone, and it was quite an unusual atmosphere with people walking out of the ground, streaming out of the ground at 72 minutes. So, you know, when you say you silence the crowd, that definitely happened.
What a great sight to see. We shouldn't take this for granted. We shouldn't be whining about we were terrible. It's like, you know, sport is imperfect. That's why we watch it.
Well, it was. Look, it is imperfect. I mean, but I have to tell you, it's a great game. And the atmosphere in the ground was really, really interesting because, like, from the start, okay, you had people complaining about the red card, but it was a straight red card. It's a stupid tackle. I mean, how often do we have to talk about that? I mean, I remember having an argument a long time ago with Joe Schmidt over it, and he always liked that tackle because it led to that turnover, that choke tackle that we used to have. But the way the laws are reffed now is you just can't do it. So any coach that's saying tackle in a stand-up position is wrong. Any player who thinks that he's okay is wrong. And the referee got it exactly right. He said it was a stand-up tackle and he runs the risk of making head contact. That's it in a nutshell, you know, and intent has nothing to do with anything. Because we're trying to get rid of this out of the game. And I can tell you, for anybody who says the game is getting soft, I'd say there isn't a body there that isn't black and blue after that game. It was an extraordinary game of rugby. But the crowd reacted very negatively to that. Then Ireland started incredibly well. I thought Dan Sheehan, 2 or 3 interjections down on the left wing were brilliant. And James Lowe, who... Look, I wasn't the biggest fan of his. My God, is he growing into the jersey? I thought he was involved in a huge amount of things that were good. He played really, really well. Scored that cracking try. Of course, all the Irish went mad in the crowd. Then kind of lost our way a little because of the pressure and the fact that England weren't doing anything with the ball. It's very hard to do a lot when the only place we could do it in was deep down. But we still continued to do what we wanted to do. But the noise in the middle of the game and the noise when it went to 15 all and the singing and, you know, it was an electric atmosphere. And then the last 10 minutes, Ireland blew them away. And the resignation in the stadium was something as well. And And also there was jubilation from Ireland, but also kind of recognition that this was unbelievably tough test match.
Yeah.
And if we want to kind of like compound the positivity here as well, I guess England playing so well with 14 men suggests that there is more than a puncher's chance of them doing Ireland a big favour on Saturday.
Yeah, look, I think England have huge capability. I think they're very frustrating to play against. Against France, it'll be interesting. They just the one thing about England is they didn't look like they were going to threaten the line at all, and they need that in their box. They've only scored 2 tries in the Six Nations apart from against Italy, and Italy always seems to go with an asterisk on these conversations. And against France, I could see them putting them under a huge amount of pressure. I think they got an awful lot out of the victory. Out of the defeat. I'm not sure that I would agree with. Well, I'm not sure that I agree with Eddie Jones pretty much any of the time. But look, he's trying to find something to hang his hat on for it. But I do think they have a capability, and I also think France, and this is a young French team, will not quite know how to deal with an English team. England's backs are to the wall. If they lose this, do they come 5th for a second year in the trot? That's a pretty horrendous place for them. And I think it's going to be a cracking game. I think they have the ability by not playing. See, if you make a mistake against France, they exploit it. England aren't making a huge amount of mistakes and made very few at the weekend. But they did run out of steam at the end, and whether that's down just to 14 men or not, we don't know.
Is there anything that would worry you about Scotland from an Ireland perspective?
There's plenty that worries me about Scotland. Scotland have an ability to spark. This is probably their biggest game because of having failed at a couple of spots earlier on this year. They'll put everything into this game. Scotland are messy. I mean, it's interesting to watch them. They're messy. They're not. They don't seem to play coherently. They don't play from one week to the next. My big fear for this would be any level of taking things for granted, because I think like Scotland have the ability to sparkle and get everything really right, and if it sticks, you can be put under pressure. But look, I'd still expect Ireland to win.
All right, Keith, great to have you with us. Enjoy the game of the weekend. Thanks.
Cheers, gents.
Did you watch the Ireland England?
No, I didn't. Couldn't say it. No, I wasn't. I was out. But yeah, interesting. Listen, I've read a lot about the game. Yeah, it was interesting how it panned out in terms of the early sending. I've just liked the fact, Keith alluded to it there, in terms of how the teams are looking to play. Got a bit of a sense of that watching them over a few games. Different style of play to what we've been used under Smith. You lads know better than me, and yeah, it was good to hear them say that in that kind of pressurised environment when things, you got that talk about Manchester United last night, second half, things not kind of going your way, that bit of panic kind of setting in. It's a natural thing. I've got a huge amount of confidence in terms of what you're actually doing with the ball. It all goes a little bit pear shaped, but obviously Ireland stuck to the game plan, had confidence in it. Yeah. And kind of trusted in it. They went back to get them over the line. Yeah. Now you could argue 15 men would have been a bit different, but they did what they had. So that was probably the most impressive thing. I mean, can England deal with? England looks at physically. This big thing about the French, like physicality, isn't it? In terms of the advantage they have, looks to me as if the English can actually deal with that. At least the French ain't going to physically run all over them. Is that a fair point to make?
They are the precise straws that we are clutching at this week, Kenny. Yes. I think we hope they can. That's from an Ireland perspective. We really need that, because that will give England an opportunity to kick 5 or 6 penalties and potentially win the game. That's the only way you can see that happening. France also have. Yeah, but that could easily happen, and obviously the pressure. But France also have creativity as well as physicality. They do have. Really.
No, I understand that. So.
That's the fear.
It's beyond the bounds, isn't it? It's not beyond the bounds. England could go there.
At least watch the first half.
When Ireland won the Grand Slam in 2009, they won it without having the best scoring difference. They currently have the best scoring difference in the Six Nations, and it's only happened once since then that a team wins the championship, or the team that has the best scoring difference doesn't win the championship. That was 2019, and England didn't do it. So it means absolutely nothing, what I just said there. But it's.
I can't see our lads. I can't see our lads buckling at the Aviva. You know, sometimes, you know, the home, the pressure,
not
playing in front there. No. They seem to respond to that. The rugby lads just seem to kind of thrive off that, feed off it, don't they?
Well, I mean,
we elevates their game.
We did blow a game against Scotland for a Triple Crown. What year was that? Was that 2011? When was that?
Well, we would have said 13.
It was the end. You're searching there a little bit, aren't you?
The end of the kidney era.
10 years.
It was in Croke Park. It was the last game in Croke Park.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
They were going to give Croke Park the send-off it deserved, and then they had this damn squib of a performance.
Is that Finn Russell playing?
He will be this weekend, yeah.
He'd be a woody.
I've got to do the competition here at 8:40 this morning. Today on OTB, across all our channels, we have 2 pairs of tickets to give away to the sold-out Ireland-Scotland game in the Aviva Stadium on Saturday afternoon, but we need you to get into TikTok to do this. It's all thanks to Aldi, official fresh food partner to Irish Rugby, who this month launched Play With Your Food with the IRFU. New research by Aldi has shown that over 40% of Irish kids don't eat fruit and veg every day. Play With Your Food encourages kids to think differently about how they consume fruit and veg. To enter, to be with a chance of winning the pair of tickets to Ireland Scotland, you have to do the following. Follow OTB on TikTok. That's @off_the_ball. That's our handle. And leave a comment with our code word. Just make sure you include the code word Finn Russell. You've got to be following us, because otherwise we can't DM you to let you know you've won the tickets. So let's bring in the papers.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not,
yes.
No.
All right. We're going to start with OTBSports.com, and he just needs to mature a bit more. This is Aaron Connolly. Dan talking about him last night. He scored again for Borough. The Spotify camp now. Barcelona agreed deal with the streaming giants to, take money. Team 33 rides again. Wales chief Mooney backed Ukraine World Cup bye, and Six Nations is the pinnacle tournament outside the World Cup. That's Brian just got talking about, making sure that we still pay attention to the Six Nations and it's not just a World Cup warm-up. United take another step into decline at the back page of the Irish Independent this morning, and players to continue media boycott over GAA expenses dispute. This doesn't show any sign of getting fixed at the moment. I mean, presumably there are talks at least happening there. Rachel Blackmore's on the front of all the newspapers and the sports sections today. Double delight, racing's golden couple complete back-to-back champion hurdles. We'll talk about that with John Duggan in a little while. Athletic offer straight toothless Reds, and a few more stories there. The Daily Telegraph, rotten Chelsea's humiliating U-turn. Chelsea have been forced into a humiliating climb down over a request to play their FA Cup quarter-final behind closed doors after coming under attack from the government, Middlesbrough and a section of their own fans. So it's Gibson, the chairman of Middlesbrough, Steve Gibson, described Chelsea's request as abhorrent and described them as a rotten football club. Graham Lasso said it was embarrassing. A senior government source linking Abramovich to a warmonger says Chelsea's action shows they do not seem to understand the seriousness of the situation they are in. What did you make of Chelsea's request?
Yeah, I don't buy into some of that you've read it. I don't see the logic in some of the comments there, to be honest with you. I'm very surprised they asked for the game to be played behind closed doors. That's the first thing, because that sounds like somebody's made that decision in isolation upstairs. Because if you had canvassed the Chelsea dressing room before you made the decision on that, I could almost guarantee you, hand on heart, 95, not 100% of those Chelsea players would have said, no, we want the crowd there. I don't care that it's all Middlesbrough supporters. We want an atmosphere there. That's where we want to play.
Yeah.
Even after the COVID, the whole thing that we've been in, playing in front of, empty stadiums. So whoever's made that decision upstairs and thought it's in the best interest, even in respect to the game, what gives Chelsea a better chance of winning that game if there's 20,000 Middlesbrough supporters inside that stadium? That's how I feel. I haven't played the game, and I'm sure most professionals will feel the same. So that's what really surprises me.
You're saying Middlesbrough fans are useless. They'll make no impact whatsoever. That's the undertone here.
No, I'd give them probably the opposite in terms of they're very vocal, vociferous, energised, the whole, and you respond to that. That's a normal thing. A sportsman responds to that, don't they? I'm not sure where it's going at beyond that in a tangent.
It feels like Chelsea are trying to make a point.
This club is rotten to the core. I'm not sure where they're going with that. That's off the back of that. That's obviously using that.
Steve Gibson described Bruce Buck, the Chelsea chairman, as an excuse of a man. it's Joe Brolly-esque. You can forget about him as a man.
I mean, do Chelsea even know what's going on? Like, are they aware of why there's a bit of controversy around their club, or is their head completely in his hands and they feel that they've been completely screwed up? Like, Bruce Buck would be doing well just to just to shut up, and everybody involved in Chelsea would be doing well just to shut up a little bit, because there would be reasonable questions.
What do you mean by that when you say that? Who in Chelsea? So did employees who are dependent on Chelsea Football Club to pay their wages, pay their bills?
I mean,
they should shut up as well. They shouldn't come out and say, well, hold on, it's my livelihood at stake here. What's happened to the football club at the moment? No revenue coming. This club could go under. I could lose my job. So those people should shut up as well.
No, that's not what I said.
Nobody's talking about Abramovich here. Well, you said everybody within Chelsea.
I'm sorry, what I mean, everybody that's a higher. Well, I think that everybody who's employed are well open to being asked questions about what the current situation is. And in fairness, Tuchel's done okay asking them. But I think, in fairness, when it comes to somebody like Bruce Buck and people in the actual hierarchy of the club, I think there were far more valid questions about their relationship with Abramovich than anybody else lower down the food chain at that club. And I think that it is just...
But like what? Well, give me an example of what question should he be asked, Bruce Buck or whoever those people are working on the board. What questions should they be asked in relation to their relationship with Abramovich?
How aware were they of the information that was brought out in Westminster last week of the man who pays their wages, the man who they knowingly worked with? I think that even when you go lower down the food chain, I think that it is absolutely open season on Tuchel to have to answer those questions.
We've got to move on because we've got 3 more bits to do. We can come back to this a little bit later on. I guess it seemed like Chelsea were trying to pull a bit of politics and see if they could get an easing of the sanctions, and it's resulted in a backlash, so it has been a bad move all around. So right, 8:45 this morning here on OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're turning our attention to hurling, and I'm delighted to say Tommy Walsh is with us. Tommy, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Ger. Good morning, lads.
Nothing quite so controversial, I think, in the world of GA, but then there's obviously the potential for the GPA and the GA route to get even bigger. You've been watching this, I presume, with an interested eye. What's your take on the row at the moment about expenses?
Yeah, Ger, I have been watching it and see both sides of the coin, really. First of all, to look at the two organisations, and I've had help from both from when I started hurling, the GPA, first of all, they have been superb for, we'll say, the weaker counties, getting players from counties maybe that weren't looking after their players from the get-go. They're now being looked after very well, maybe up to this point. And players in the stronger counties, so much goes into the game now that your career nearly is put on hold. But the GPA have been brilliant to any player, whether they're from weaker counties or stronger counties, looking after them, that they might have to further their education or, go back into the education system maybe at 25, 30, 35 years of age. No problem. Anytime you needed help with anything really as regards player welfare, GPA have been just absolutely brilliant, and it's a great peace of mind for any county player to have. And as I said, probably have helped the guys from the weaker counties more than probably anyone could ever believe. Then on the GA side of it, Ger, you have the same thing. I've been part of the GA since I was probably, straight out of the hospital, really. I've been brought to games, training sessions, every weekend, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, you name it. The GA and the GA people that run it, they've been incredible. And I'd say it's the best run organisation, best amateur organisation in the whole world, as a family, as a community. We only saw during lockdowns, nowhere to go, nowhere to look forward to the weekend, when everyone was in lockdown, whether you were playing, whether you had a family member playing or not. Everybody in the parish looks forward to the game on the Sunday. You can build your week around it, somewhere where to go. You don't have to lump the kids into the car and go off maybe shopping for the day, So both organisations have been incredible. So let's put it that way. So the current situation then, it is a little bit complicated because there's the issue around, first of all, I suppose, getting paid the mileage allowance, whether it's 50 cent or 65 cent. I believe it's back up to the 65 cent now. So in most counties, I believe they are being paid. So I think some of the weaker counties, they're not. But why are they not getting paid, is it the county board, I think, pays them? So, do they just not have the money to pay them, or are they just not paying them? So that's probably a whole other issue. As far as just from looking at it over the last couple of days, as far as what I can see is the GA have agreed to, is it 4 sessions per week and pay back to the 65 cent a mile. That looks like a good deal for me. So the issue then is it's around the counties that are not paying them. But then you have to get behind that again. Why haven't they been paying them? They mightn't have the money. So I think it's just maybe common sense communication between all parties, or probably the parties that are affected, Ger. is probably the real solution to this problem.
And also players who aren't getting paid are essentially training more than 4 times a week. Is that a problem in your opinion? The fact that they're training that amount of times, I should say.
I know it has gone to new levels. It's not a bad idea. How it's been done, maybe I'm not sure if it's the way to do it, but maybe send out a message that like we are better, I think, as being an amateur organisation, because the county player comes back around the clubs, the parishes. He does his jobs. He's around the training sessions. There's no, we'll say, jealousy. There's no there's no egos really going around. Like, there's nobody that works hard in the club putting in hours upon hours, looking at the county player, maybe swanning in and saying, look at this guy, he's on 20 grand, 30 grand per year. If he's only getting his mileage, it's, that's what they deserve, for the amount. They are the elite players and they are bringing huge money into their organisation. So I think the amateur ethos is definitely crucial for me, and bring it back to the 4 times per week. Like, if you go to 7 times per week, you nearly are professional then. I know they're nearly professional as it is on. So it's a complicated conversation. And it's hard to stop teams. And I know from playing myself now, you're nearly putting in more now than you ever were, because you want to be the best. You want to be better than your opponents. So it's the 4 times per week is not a bad idea if they can just come to the table. I don't think anyone wants to fight over this. Just come to the table and because the GPA guys, they're clubmen and county men first and foremost as well. The guys running the GPA are the same. So I think it's just all come to the table, and maybe if it wasn't washed out in public as much, might be better for everyone,
For everybody, yeah. Obviously, a bit of frustration on the GPA side that they had to go that far. One last question, an obvious one. Would there have been years where you were training more or being at a training session or a match more than 4 times a week over the years?
No, we only train 3 times a week, and gym sessions then. We went to the gym till February, Ger. And then once the hurling stopped, then
that was it.
We were just trying to stay fresh for the hurling. But it has changed now, so the lads are in the gym. I'd imagine they're back training. Like, the science has come into it. You've often have guys on this podcast and this radio program talking about the benefits of rest, the benefits of science. And I don't know, is anybody training collectively that much anymore? Like, I'd imagine 3 times nearly max will be the case. And then you go to the gym yourself. And if you choose to go collectively with your friends, maybe that's another idea. But I think, the less training, probably the better. 3 times a week, I think, is enough, because, like, at the end of the day, we live other lives. You have jobs and you have social lives. And I think, it's like, say when you're a professional, you're training 7 days a week, suddenly you're going through a bad period or things aren't going well for you for 6 months. What else do you have going on in your life? Probably not great for mental health. Towards when you're only training 3 times a week, getting a gym session done yourself, then great, because you have other things going on in your life that there's a balance there.
Yeah, 100%. We should, I know you wanted to talk about the Camogie final, the All-Ireland Camogie final between Arrett Bala and Sarsfields. It was a bit of a titanic game between 2 sides that really have been to the forefront in recent years. What specifically caught your eye in this one, Tommy?
Yeah, well, I think it's even the stories behind them, Ger. Like, Sarsfields came back, they lost the final in 17 and 18, came back against Slotneil, they came back, who were a powerhouse themselves, that won 3 in a row. They came back then and won it. And, all the heartbreak, and some of them players would have experienced heartbreak with Galway. Back they came to Croke Park for the 3rd time. Like, you have 12 months of waiting around, 12 months of pain, and come back then and win it finally. I just thought at the time it was an amazing story. Then fast forward through the pandemic, looked like it wasn't going to be paid the Club All-Irelands. But I know from hearing stories around here, like the Camogie, they fought tooth and nail for the club championship to go ahead. And they really fought hard for it, and the Camogie organisation agreed to it. So they ended up playing the Club All-Ireland last December, a couple of days before Christmas. And heartbreak again for him, Arrett Bala came on and beat him. Una Lacey got the hat-trick, one of the Keos, I think it was Stacey, was married the day before. Like, just the stories around it were incredible. So they took the Christmas off, I think 2 or 3 weeks off, as this in the hopper after it. And then back to the final again. Who are they playing? Only their nemesis again, Oulart. And victory then in the final. And, you know, I thought there was great passages of play in the final. Teamwork, crossfield ball, like the crossfield ball into Siobhan McGrath for the opening goal that probably set the tone for the day in the first couple of minutes was an amazing ball, a dream ball for a corner forward. She came out, took on her opponent and straight through and straight into the back of the net. So I think the story behind that Sarsfields team is just incredible, you know. And the Hopper McGrath, like he was a hero for Galway back in the late 80s. I saw him in the 93 All-Ireland. Came on then, he's put huge, you know, his own Sarsfield team were a great club team themselves up in Crow Park many a day during the 90s. So, yeah, it was a great final. And even Oulart, Gerard, the goal, I think, if any forward line, whether they're on the hurlers or on the camogie teams, if you're looking at the passage of play for Una Lacey's goal in the first half, Ursula J, and it's kind of the chemistry, it's kind of the, you know, what the great players, they just know what each other are doing. Ursula Jacob got the ball around 35 yards out, soloed in, and if you look at Una Lacey's movement for the goal, she kind of turned back in around the full back, took the ball on the run, on a diagonal run, and absolutely a bullet to the back of the net. So I thought it was a great advertisement for camogie. Like, you know, what Oulart, they won 2 Club All-Irelands before. Some of them girls were on the 3-in-a-row Wexford team back in the mid-2000s. And just great careers, great story careers, and it's great to see them getting the publicity they're getting now. Like Una Lacey, she's and Mary, her sister, they've won 3 Club All-Irelands. Their mother won 5. Margaret O'Leary was her name. She won one with a club up in Dublin. It was looking it up. I think their name was Owen Rua, but came back and won 4 at Buffer's Alley. And you know, Wexford to camogie has been huge from day one, especially their club side. I think Brian Cody's wife could have been on that. I'm not sure. She's a Buffer's Alley woman. I know she was an unbelievable hurler. She could have been on that team. I must look into it. But
right.
Yeah, Una Lacey, Mary Lister and Mutter.
Right, the genes are good and it seems to matter a bit, yeah.
It is, and like Una Lacey scored 2 goals in the 07 All-Ireland year when Wexford won for the first time in 07 that time with that team. And she 15 years later, 2022, 14 years later, at Christmas she scored a hat-trick when they won it, and just there a week or two ago she scored 2 goals again, although they lost. But you know, how great has she been? Ursula Jacob the same.
Yeah. No, it's some achievement, and it's great that rivalry has kind of come to the forefront and people are getting familiar with the characters, because that in turn is going to help make people tune in the next time that they're on telly as well, or ideally go to the match. I do want to just talk a little bit about the league, and because hurling sorted out its structures and we now have a brilliant championship in Munster and Leinster, the final few rounds of the league, it's hard for us to understand exactly what teams are trying to get out of them. Some teams put in shadow teams, and we saw with Cork last year against Limerick, it didn't really work out for them in the end. Other teams are using it to make sure there's competition for places. So I guess I'm really asking is, how much should we be reading into what happens over the next few weeks?
Yeah, I think every team would have different priorities. Starting with this weekend, Ger, like the Galway and Clare game, and Cork and Wexford game, they're kind of dead rubbers. Like, you know, they all know kind of what's happening in that group. I think Cork and Wexford, I think, are nearly through at this stage. I think the big one is the Kilkenny Waterford game. I think you can read everything into that game. I think that will be championship type teams. Liam Cahill, he has done so much to implement a character, a winning mentality, a toughness, a mean streak in that Waterford team. Characteristics that's needed to win an All-Ireland. They have made huge progress, starting with the All-Ireland semi-final in 2020, 9 points down against Kilkenny. You know, and they had 1 or 2 victories against Kilkenny over the previous few years, but usually it was a Kilkenny victory at the end, and 9 points down. You would never expect Kilkenny to lose, but they came back, because that's what Liam Cahill teams do. His under-21 2021 team with Tipperary, they scored a last-minute goal to win an under-21 All-Ireland. So he's been doing this all his teams have been doing this all throughout his coaching career. So he's going to try and... He's not going to go up to Nolan Park on Sunday. There's huge interest here in Kilkenny, Ger. Massive interest. I'd say there could be 12,000, 15,000 people in it. We've been waiting for a big game in Nolan Park, you know, for a long time. We all remember the Kenny Tipperary one in the Championship a few years ago, where it was a sellout. Well, this as a league, spectacle, I'd say will be something similar. If relatively speaking, huge interest because coming from Watford as well, they had their biggest victory over Tipperary in nearly 50 years. But it's the Watford team coming. They have stars and they have a panel. We've seen against Tipperary, the one without all the big guys, Ozzy, Callum Lyons, Jamie Barron, Desi. I presume they'll all be back Sunday, and we look forward to seeing them and see how our lads do up against them on Sunday, Ger.
Kind of feels like this is where it begins, Tommy. Like, I mean, a week off, the weather's getting good. We're only a few weeks away from Championship. This weekend is where we can start really looking at the proper form lines.
Yeah, you're right, Owen. Like, say, especially in that game, because I think both teams will do everything they can to win it, to make a league semi-final. And huge interest from both crowds. Like, we all saw Ballygunner's last gasp victory up in Croke Park in the All-Ireland final. And Desi Hutchison has been probably the name on everybody's lists since he came back from playing soccer abroad, and he has not let anybody down. He'd done it on the biggest stage of all, Club All-Ireland Day, couple of pints down. He usually loves the ball out in front, uses his electric speed, probably the fastest player in the country at the moment, himself and Jack O'Connor, out in front over the bar every time. But was the goal he got in the Club All-Ireland on is what made me stand up. Caught the ball under, I'd say it was one of the Mullins, probably Darren, who is a fantastic player in Kilkenny club circles here at the moment. Caught the ball, and he didn't go to Dean Mason's strong side. Spun it back around, which was more difficult to do at the time, back into the right-hand side of the net, and that probably changed the game and kept him in the game. So we're looking forward to seeing how our guy, Hugh Lawler, who went from strength to strength, probably an unknown player really from so many years, had a starring campaign with O'Loughlin's last year, has really turned it on with Kilkenny the last couple of years and has been nearly our player of the league. So we're looking to see how, hopefully if Desi is playing, Hugh will take him on in Nolan Park on Sunday.
What do you think is going to happen? Give us your prediction.
I think it's going to be tight. Kilkenny you're wondering what have they taken, some teams taken out of the league campaign. They've found new players. So they've Cian Kenny, they've Niall Brazel, David Blanchfield, who plays the the new game, which is bring the ball up and give it in a good ball into your forwards. David Blanchfield has done that with Bennisbridge for many years. He scored 3 points the last day from wing back. He's been a fantastic find. So it's kind of new guys on the block for Kilkenny. Hopefully one or two of the Ballyhale lads back in against probably the new stars of the GA world, I suppose, in Watford. And I'm not trying to build them up. I think it will be a Watford victory on Sunday. I think it'll come all the form. I think the new players back in from that were missing the last, it will give them an extra incentive. So I think it will be tight, but I think it will be a Watford victory.
I heard you explaining the spine of the Kilkenny team with Joe a couple of weeks ago, and it did sound like you were getting excited, like there's genuine excitement amongst Kilkenny hurling people. Not that you're back, but that certainly there's no reason for this team to fear anybody at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's the case in the whole of the inter-county game at the moment. There's nobody really fears anybody at the moment with Limerick after losing the last couple of weeks. Now everybody's gander is up. Definitely the spine around it, and you see it's the new players then in around the spine. The Cian Kennys, the David Blanchfields, like Owen Cody's a year older, the Adrian Mullins a year older. So not alone have you the good spine up the middle, which is vital for any All-Ireland winning team. You now have the wingmen beside him. Fierce excitement in Kilkenny because we've seen him in the club scene. Like Cian Kenny is like a young Cian Lynch, if you ask me, Ger. So watch him, I think, get better and better as these years go on. Once the management, young players, they often need a management, an arm around the shoulder, because they're going to have good and bad days when you're starting off in your first year or two. But keep picking them, keep playing them, because the stars will come good eventually. So Cian Kenny is like a young Cian Lynch to me. So it's the spine of the team with the youngsters around them. And to win All Ireland's, Ger, you need forwards. And to be not afraid of anyone, you need forwards. We've Adrian Mullen, Owen Cody, TJ Reid, Parrig is up there now. Billy Ryan is really having a fantastic lead, fierce speed, in the full forward line. And he's like his club mate Eddie Brennan, when he gets the ball, it's direct straight for a goal. So, yeah, we're excited down in Kilkenny, and we're really excited for Sunday, Ger, to be honest.
Right, really looking forward to it now. Tommy, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, lads. Best luck.
Enjoy
Bye.
the game. That's Tommy Walsh whetting our appetite for what most people are complaining about is the end of the league and how close it is to the championship. But
he's got some memory recall, isn't he, Tommy? He was referencing games there 10, 15 years ago, and minute. He wasn't referenced that when they won that game. He was talking about individual scores. Describe. How old is he now, Tommy Walsh?
34, 35?
No, he's surely older than that. He surely still be playing at that age. Tommy Walsh, Kilkenny is 38.
That's some memory. Even the club saying, boom.
I think most people have that kind of memory except you. You don't remember Tony Yeboah, you don't remember David Beckham, you don't remember Paulo Di Canio. We have to show you pictures.
Well, I'd also like to mention, he had collar and tie. He didn't get the.
For us,
it wasn't suit and boot. Just for he's heading out to work. Surely he's on his way out the door.
Normally people respect us, Kenny.
No way he's got into it.
I saw you on TV last week wearing a shirt and tie as well, and I was like,
funny. See this thing I've got on. I wore this down the gym last week. Got to be honest with you, I actually wore it down.
That's the standard we're at.
That's the difference. No way he's got suit and booted for the show tonight.
he does.
Fact.
Big 1 month of championship today. By the way,
right?
Yes, that's the big occasion. 16th of.
So I don't think you're going to be too much into too many games this weekend. Actually, I think the form lines this weekend will be irrelevant in some cases. But that game that he was talking about, definitely. 5 minutes past 9 here this morning. We're going to talk to Andy Mitten next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
I don't think goalkeepers should be taking penalties. I think it's too much to ask of them. They're not outfield players. They're doing the stuff to save the penalties.
So I rang my agent. He's in the hotel room next door. So he tried to give me 3.5 years there, not 2.5. He's like, no. I was like, go through the contract, please. I'm not getting an extra year here. He's like, hold on, I'll ring you back. He rings me back and he's like, I can't believe they say nothing to nobody.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
Who's getting your nod for that final Champions League place, Emma? If you had to call it now, who's getting it? City, United or Spurs?
United are looking good. I think it's going to be between United and City. I think Spurs just won't. I think they'll just fall short. City's form, it's hard to write them off because I think they've never finished outside the top 2 or something. So for them to finish outside the top 3 would be a crazy thought. But considering the start of the season that they have, if they were to get that third, it would be very impressive.
Very impressive, since we were talking about outfield players nearly talking out in goal and things like that. Like they were really, really struggling. But the fact that they already have silverware as well this year, I mean, their confidence must be on the up, and getting over the line against Spurs will definitely be a big one. You can tell their manager, he was very relieved, very happy with that one. I think I wouldn't write them off. I'm putting United up there just because I'm a United fan. That's just biased. So
yeah, I think my heart says United, but my head says City.
Yeah.
My heart will never say United. Not really City either, but
lesser of two evils, is that it?
I don't know. Bad as each other, really.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do.
Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's 8 minutes past 9 this morning. You were listening in the ad break there to a clip from the latest episode of Koi Gig. Karen Duggan, Ruth Fahey and Emma Carroll there running through who they think is going to end up in the Champions League next season from the WSL. Koi Gig is the podcast which is out every week. You can get it on the OTB Sports app or wherever you get your podcasts on the OTB football stream. It's brought to you in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the women's national team. That full episode is up now. Just subscribe to the OTB football podcast feed. Now, back to the Manchester United scenario and situation, and I'm delighted to say Andy Mitten joins us. Andy, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Obviously not a great morning for you, and sometimes we do these after a European game and you're absolutely thrilled and buzzing off it, and then some mornings it's like this and it's a bit of a wake. With the clarity of whatever comes in the morning after a performance like that, where are the club right now and what needs to happen next over the next 2 months?
Well, the club are out of Europe in March, the 5th in the table. It's been a hugely disappointing season for Manchester United. I wasn't surprised that the team went out. The team performance in Madrid was atrocious, and Atletico were the better side at Old Trafford in a horrible game which suited the manager. The referee wasn't the best either, but Manchester United failed to land a punch on Atletico, whereas a couple of times they split United open. So it was a very frustrating night at Old Trafford. Now the season will just flatline down to ending. The players will come back and having had a break, because there's no game this weekend, because the team got knocked out of the FA Cup at home by a Championship side. And I'll talk about the race for fourth, pathetic that it is. But financially, getting in the Champions League is important to Manchester United. At the moment, Arsenal are the form team, so even getting in the top four looks improbable. You can see why the club wanted to sign up for the European Super League. It offers some guarantees, and the way Manchester United are going, which is downwards, they need them type of guarantees. And there'll be lots of talk about a new manager. There'll be lots of talk about shiny new players, who's going to come in. And some people will buy that, and some people will just think, same old, same old. The one bright spot will be the Youth Cup final, which the young Manchester United players have reached for the first time since 2011. For the rest, they'll be watching on as the main rivals, Liverpool and Manchester City, fight out a title race and probably progress in Europe as well.
There's a couple of things that we talk about how the club is run and the decision making. There definitely has been money around, and there definitely will be money available for whoever comes next. Is qualifying for the Champions League important in terms of securing the next manager, or do you still think that if it is going to be Pochettino or Ten Hag, or we've been talking about Thomas Tuchel as a possibility now all of a sudden, that they won't really mind if the team is in Champions League next season, knowing full well that it'll be their job to get the team there, but that this is still Manchester United?
I think the Manchester United job remains an attractive one for most managers. If a manager is in the Europa League as opposed to the Champions League, and even that's not a given. I asked this question to a few people inside the club, and one of the answers was given that the Europa League is actually better for the squad because you can give more minutes to different players, but everyone will be trying to get into the Champions League, not least the players, because their contracts are heavily incentivised towards playing Champions League football. Sadly, Manchester United have been in this situation in recent years where they failed to finish in the top four. So it may be Europa League or worse with all the Thursday night football. Given the level of this current Manchester United team, the Europa League is more at where they're at. I never expected the team to be winning the Champions League this year. The team only got through to the knockout stage by the skin of the teeth thanks to some late Ronaldo goals against Atalanta, Villarreal, and failed to turn up in Madrid for that first leg. So we'll talk about a manager, and it's a huge job. I mean, financially, Manchester United, as you said, they've got money. They've spent a lot of money. They've squandered a lot of money. The recruitment has been patchy at best, and that's why the team are in fifth position, whereas teams who've spent a similar amount of money are way ahead of United. Only a year ago, Manchester United finished second. So this season has seen a notable decline.
Go on.
To make matters worse, there's a bulldozer headed right in Old Trafford's direction.
Well, I've been writing about this for 7 or 8 years, about the need to expand Old Trafford, about the need to spend some money on Old Trafford. I've done that because I love Old Trafford. I love football stadiums. If you were to ask me about stadiums in Cork or Dublin, I could hold my own because I'm an anorak for stadiums. So I care deeply about the one which I've been to most. And there will be talks about whether is better to rip it up and start again. I don't think that's necessary, to be honest. I think it should be redeveloped. That will cost significant amounts. The capacity should be increased. There should be some symmetry to the stadium because at the moment the main stand is smaller than the other 3 stands, and the roof is an issue as well. It swoops too low, and the original reason behind that was to allow light to get to the pitch, but technology has moved on since then. I was in the Bernabeu last week for work, and I saw the redevelopment that Real Madrid are doing. I've seen the one which Barcelona are planning. These are costing hundreds of millions of pounds. This isn't just bolting a few extra seats onto terracing or whatever. And I think that should be where Manchester United should be looking at. That said, the club do own a lot of land around Old Trafford. Stadium architecture has moved on a lot in the last 10 years, let alone the last 20 years. You can see the difference between Spurs' new ground and Arsenal's new ground. And people will talk about it a lot. I think the reason that story came out the other day was partly because of comments in a fans forum, but partly because constructors would have a vested interest if a new stadium was to be built, as opposed to a new roof being put on.
Are you so emotionally tied to the existing structure that actually you would prefer to see that maintained than the potential for raising it to the ground and building something like the Wanda Metropolitana or something like the Spurs Stadium?
Well, Old Trafford is very different to the old White Hart Lane. That held 36,000. That was far too small. Old Trafford holds 74,000. It's already the biggest stadium. With Atletico, the Metropolitano is a fantastic stadium, but it's a 25-minute tube ride out of Madrid. Old Trafford's got a good location, and that would stay because there's land around it. My preferred option would be to redevelop Old Trafford as it is now. Am I absolutely against it being rebuilt? No. I mean, I've got an attachment, but what's that to? Red plastic seats. I've seen the stadium basically be rebuilt in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's I just think it's not necessary to rip up a stadium that was redeveloped extensively between 1993 and 2006. It's fundamentally good, but significant development. Put an extra tier on top of the main stand, put some more executive seats in if that's what it's going to need to pay for them. Look at the roof and look at the cladding outside of the stadium as well. But it's well served and it's a really good ground, and reports of its death have been exaggerated.
Okay, that's interesting. So, and it's actually easier then for the team to continue to have money and investment in it if you're not doing the whole massive rework. And again, I think that might feed into the potential candidates. Ten Hag went out last night, Pochettino went out last week, Tuchel's still in the competition. Of the available runners and riders, who do you want?
I want the manager of Spain, Luis Enrique, but you don't always get what you want, do you? I think that Pochettino is a good manager. Ten Hag's done a very good job at Ajax. Tuchel is the left field option because of what's going on at Chelsea. We don't know how that's going to develop. He's the coach of the current European and world champions. He's clearly an excellent coach who's conducted himself well, I think, in the circumstances over the last week. But the decision has not been made. United are actively pursuing the various options at the moment. But yeah, Luis Enrique will be the one that I want. But would I complain if the other ones come in? No. Would I be worried that it's going to be same old? Yes.
So would you take another interim to take Manchester United to the end of the World Cup and then get Luis Enrique at the end of that? If that interim be, I don't know who, Ranić Mark II, I don't know who it would be.
Yeah, it's the right question, and that fills me with unease because an interim is an interim, and if the club are going to spend a lot of money in the summer, who's going to be making those decisions about whether those players should come in?
Yeah, it's very tangled, isn't it? Andy, great to have you with us, and sorry for your troubles.
Worst things happen in the world, trust me.
It's true for sure. Andy Mitten there, editor of United We Stand. You can read his work in The Athletic and on ESPN, of course, and you can listen to his podcast. OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Luis Enrique, a bit of a left field one, haven't heard of that too many places.
Yeah, no, I think when you stand back and think about it, I think it's fair enough. But the point I made, just obviously he's going to lead Spain to the World Cup in Qatar in November, so just can't say how that's going to work. You can't extend Ranić's contract or another interim. Like, can he do both job? I just don't see the fit at the moment with Enrique. Those are Ten Hag. I just feel as if there's an element of risk there that you don't have to take as good a job as he's done. Ajax. I just feel Pochettino and Tuchel, for obvious reasons, are the two standout options.
Yeah. All right. John Duggan's going to join us next here on Cheltenham for tips for day 2. Here he is talking to Rachel Blackmore in the winners enclosure after a historic performance from Honeysuckle. Have a look.
Incredible. She's a phenomenal mare. We're also lucky to be involved with her. Fantastic to have Kenny Alexander here today, and brilliant to have the crowd as well.
How are you feeling going into the race?
I was actually really looking forward to it. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure when you're riding an unbeaten favourite in the champion hurdle. But yeah, I was looking forward to it. Like I have a lot of confidence in her deep down, I suppose, because she. I just know what she's capable of, and it's brilliant.
John Duggan, good morning to you.
Ger, Owen and Kenny, how's it going?
Yeah, great. Honeysuckle performed, Rachel Blackmore performed, really. I mean, obviously the horse is great, but she presented the horse at the right time, and it was textbook, and it was typical. So you know she knows what she's doing, to the point where it's like, this is amazing to watch.
Well, there's no talk of glass ceilings. It never even entered my mind, to be honest, lads. And you're right, because the horse was wide, and then she brought it inside, which is a little bit of a risky thing to do with horses in front of you, and then she just waited for the gap. And when she got the gap, she took it, and she had every confidence that the horse would produce for her around the bend, and then that turn of foot was unleashed, and then she just stormed up the hill. I was so impressed by the way she stormed up the hill, Honeysuckle. I thought it was a much stronger race, guys, than last year, and Rachel rode with supreme confidence. It's just fantastic for her to have her family there, to have a deafening roar. Like that is a cliche, but it really was a crackling sound when Honeysuckle powered up that hill, and a lot of pent-up feelings from 2 years, I think, unleashed in the ring yesterday at Cheltenham, and she got a great reception, and it was clearly the story of the day. Well done, Henry de Bromhead, as well. I was here 14 years ago when he had a favourite for the champion hurdle size in Europe, who pulled up with a back problem. So you have the bad days, but there's been a few great days now for Honeysuckle, 15 of them to be precise, because she's never been beaten.
Brilliant lines from Barry Glendenning in the back of the Guardian this morning. Braying drunks, a tidal wave of tweed and mustard corduroy, Ray Parlour sculling pints in the Guinness Village at 10:30 a.m. Slowly but surely, nature is healing.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind being down there now today and seeing where it would lead, but unfortunately, this is the opportunity cost when you're working. You've got the privilege to be able to see the races. You have to just have the opportunity cost of not being able to hang out with Ray Parlour. But he's a gooner, so it's probably a good thing.
I was just going to say, is it okay to be jealous of Ray Parlour and Alan Brazil on weeks like this?
Not sure. It's always good to have a little bit of the green-eyed monster when people are swigging pints, but I'll do my fair share when I come home.
Rachel Blackmore said she was looking forward to it and she enjoyed it. That's the type of thing where it's definitely somebody at the peak of their powers, reaching a point where you're actually able to lean into the occasion and not be overawed by the fact that this is going to be, one of the most important races as far as punters are concerned. Really short price, loads of money on this horse, and you just deliver.
Well, she's always been on Honeysuckle, and they've got that great relationship. And I suppose when you put in the effort, when Rachel's putting is very, very hard working, when you put the effort in at the yard, and last year there was a lot of heat on, obviously, as well. Maybe last year did help with no crowds, and that Honeysuckle was able to win the champion hurdle. And a lot of this is about repetition, Ger. And if Rachel Blackmore has won the Grand National, that would just give her a tremendous amount of confidence going into this season. And she's definitely there among the top riders in the weigh room now, unquestionably. And she's an asset for any racehorse.
The rest of the day, England are ahead of Ireland. England almost won as many races yesterday as they've done for the whole of last year. What happened to our pride and hubris?
Britannia ruled the world. So it'll be, I'd say, a bit of a false dawn. I think Constitution Hill was expected to do well, and he did brilliantly. 22 length win. It was pretty breathtaking stuff, to be honest. And he could actually go to Punchestown now. That Edwardstone in the Arkle Chase once again was the favourite. Marie's Rock was a bit of a surprise winner of the Mayor's Hurdle for Nicky Henderson, and then it was a Scottish winner, Cara Crambler, in the handicap chase. But like I'm looking at today, like we'll win the bumper, we'll probably win the cross country. Sir Gerhard and Journey with Me are in the top two for the opening race, the Ballymorn Officers Hurdle, and then if Shishkin doesn't win, it'll be an Irish winner. So I think there'll still be more Irish winners than English winners, but it's not a bad thing that there are British winners. This is on ITV, this is on terrestrial TV. There's 12 times the population size. We want racing to be in the back pages and the front pages like it is today, and we don't want people to lose interest in it either, just because a country just says, you know what, we're not really into this anymore. We don't want racing to turn into Gaelic Games where it's just limited to Ireland.
apparently Barry Glendenning just walked past you there. You can give him a shout out if you want. Come here, how did you get on? More importantly than all of the actual events on the track, how did you get on?
My tips were a washout. I had 2 second places, John Vaughan and Queensbrook an hour second, so I had 2 second places and nothing else. So it was a duck, as it were, in cricket terms, lads. So I'll have to just go again today, and I apologise to people on Twitter and everything, and I didn't get actually any abuse, which is interesting.
Unusual.
So people are feeling sympathetic, and maybe that's the track record of all the previous years. So we'll go again today.
We do remember the year that Willie Mullins had no winner for the first 2 days and still ended up champion trainer, right?
Yeah, well, last year I was behind and I had the last 2 winners. So it is very much a 4-day thing. But even like personally, I was up. So it can be swings and roundabouts. I backed 4 horses in one race yesterday. And the one I tipped was 9th. And the other 3 were 1st, 3rd and 4th. That's just Cheltenham. It was just a weird day.
Hold on a minute. So there's
any horse in the race? 5? You're back 4?
There was 24.
Hold on. I've been following the John Duggan stencil and golf and racing pretty much at every event for the last 3 months. And you're telling me that you made profit yesterday and I lost all my money.
Well, Owen, I can't. For Cheltenham Festival, when you have thousands and thousands of casual punters, listen to what I'm saying, I can't be given the complicated aspects of the virtual insanity style 4 runners in one race. It would just turn people off. It'd be too complicated. And the horse I really, really fancied was 9th.
Right.
But I suppose there is a difference between tipping and punting.
There's an inner circle, and you're not in it. That's what I'm hearing.
I thought we were friends, Don Duggan.
Well, it's funny because the only camera I can see right now is Owen, and Owen is looking right at me, and I said I thought we were friends, and Ryan Brem is all forgotten about, and Luke List is forgotten about.
Sorry, we established very early on, none of us are friends with Owen. We will all be thrown under the bus first when the new revolution comes, and Owen is the dictator-in-chief.
There's obviously still a bitterness of 2019 here, you know.
Definitely.
Kerry and Dubs.
Barry Glendenning was literally looking over your shoulder, perhaps even when I was reading that out. Oh, there he is again. He's hanging around. Right, give us your tips for today.
Right, okay. What are we going with? Right, this is an each way day, folks. My nap of the day is Elixir de Nuts in the 450. This is the Grand Annual 2-mile chase at 16-1.
I was listening. Sorry to interrupt. I was listening to Pony or Phony on the Ray Foley show. It was delivered by the late great J.P. Gilburn, who obviously is not late, but and I thought that many of the double entendres he was using were actually completely made up, and now you've just tipped Elixir de Nuts.
It's funny. I think we're all getting giddy, and that's a good thing. Maybe we'll get down to the Guinness Centre after all, lads. So Elixir de Nuts, this horse won well at Kempton last time in a small field, but he jumps well. He won a Grade 1 novice hurdle, the Tolworth hurdle at Sandown a few years ago. He's won over the course and distance. He's got 10 stone 13 on his back. They were thinking about putting him in a better race, possibly even the champion chase. And I think Elixir de Nuts, with John Joe O'Neill Jr. on board for Colin Tizard, has a good chance of making the frame. A lot of bookies playing 6 or 7 places in this race. So Elixir de Nuts is my nap of the day, each way at 16-1, a good jumper in that Grand Annual chase. I'm going to go for an each way bet to nothing with Chacun Persois in the champion chase. He's about 6-1, 7-1 in places. I think he's going to finish in the first 3, and if he does, you get your money back, maybe possibly with a small profit. Like, he's never delivered away from home, but there's excuses that he was not, I don't think, right at Sandown earlier in the season. In this race last year, I don't think they made enough use of him. It was a bit of a sprint, and they didn't really use his cruising speed and his jumping, and he was 3rd. At home, he's been fantastic. He's been sensational at home at Leopardstown and Punchestown over the last few years. I'm going to give him another chance. There might be the case that the hill is just not suited to him and he just doesn't like getting on the plane or on the boat. But I think Chacun Persois at that price, because there is a feeling in my mind that Shishkin and Energumen, who had that race at Ascot the last day, maybe it might have left a mark. And Chacun Persois is a fresher horse this year at a 6-1 each way. I think he's an each way bet to nothing in the champion chase.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Journey with Me in the first. Rachel Blackmore, Henry de Bromhead won this with the same ownership. Brian Atchison, Rob Kerr with Bob Ollinger last year. Journey with Me is about 6-1 shot. Won a point. I backed him at Leopardstown at Christmas, and he was very good staying on. Beat Manila Crooner and Kilcrut. And I think Journey with Me is a tough animal. Sir Gerhard obviously is the one they all have to beat, but I think Journey with Me is a decent alternative. Brave man's game. There's this feeling out there that he won't appreciate the hill and he'll get beaten by a stayer or a tougher horse in the 3 mile novice chase at 2:10. But I like Brave man's game. I think he's really improved. I think he's got a lot of class. Won at Kempton very well. Is a brilliant jumper. You got to jump around Cheltenham. Like Capodano has made mistakes. I can't really have him. Ahoy Senior is a galloper, but is he good enough? Like, he sometimes can be a bit sketchy at his fences. I like Brave man's game in that race to win. If he doesn't win, we'll know obviously that the course doesn't suit. And a couple of other each ways. In the 250, this is the Carl Cup. The Boss's Oscar is about 28 to 1, 33 to 1, 40 to 1, with Rob James riding for Gordon Elliott, taking £7 off the top weight. This horse has been running over fences, but he was actually second over hurdles in the 3 mile hurdle here last year when he was favourite. Now he's about 28, 33, 40 to 1. If he has any of his old ability over hurdles, he could be a good each way play for 6 or 7 places. And this is not related to my character at all, but Shady Operator in the cross-country chase is about a 10 to 1 shot. Enda Bulcher is the king of the banks. He's a brilliant trainer of these types of horses. And look, Tiger Roll, the rain is going to come here today. That might not suit Tiger Roll as he bids for a swan song to win this race for a 4th time. So Shady Operator each way at 10 to 1. And all of these tips, if you're missing them as I read them out, are on otbsports.com right now as well.
All right, John, enjoy the day. Thanks very much for that.
All right, lads, take care.
You can read, as he said, on otbsports.com. We'll tweet them out as well. That is John's card, and he's got amounts beside each of those as well for his charity bet, but thanks to Betway. The Cheltenham Festival was a traditional day out for the footballers.
I just can't get my head around what John just said there.
Which bit?
Well, the fact that he none of his tips came in for his followers on Twitter in their tens of thousands. Yeah, he came out quids in. How does that work?
I know. I'm asking the same
well,
question.
You can't give everything. You can't recommend 4 horses in one race.
You give a tip, you don't give a tip. You can't half give a tip, can you? Oh,
I wholeheartedly agree.
You got to
with
back
this.
up your own tip. You can't give everybody else a tip and then go and bet on another horse.
Well, he bet on that horse too.
That's all wrong. That's all. I don't think he can recover from that, John. I'll be honest with you.
We should say, but he is giving us the surest thing.
Can horses really struggle on the ferry, coming over on the ferry? Is that a fact?
I don't know.
I have had that myself over the years.
So.
You can shake it, even the day after.
A bit pukey.
Your guts are a bit, without getting sick, your guts, you're still not. Maybe that's the case, the same with the horses.
You haven't got your sea legs under you.
And they don't get the opportunity to sit in the Premier Lounge either. The horses, they don't.
No, they don't.
We're taking a movie.
Very quickly, right? I'm going to do the TikTok competition one last time, right? Last chance to enter the competition this morning. 2 pairs of tickets to give away today to the sold-out Ireland-Scotland game at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday afternoon. Did you get sorted for tickets, Owen?
No. If anybody has any Ireland versus Scotland tickets, I will be commenting on the TikTok, by the way. Get in touch. You know where I am.
Why would I give them to you?
It's all thanks to Aldi, official fresh food partner to Irish Rugby, who have this month launched Play With Your Food with the IRFU.
Won't be able to afford them after Cheltenham anyway.
To enter our competition to be with a chance of winning a pair of tickets to Ireland Scotland, do the following. Follow us on TikTok. It's at @off_the_ball. That's our handle. And make sure you leave a comment with the code word, which in this case is Finn Russell. Comment whatever you like. It can be about Finn Russell. It can have nothing to do with Finn Russell. Just make sure you include the words Finn Russell and make sure you're following us. Otherwise, if you win, we won't be able to DM you that you've won the tickets if you're not following us. No OTB AM tomorrow morning, back obviously on Friday with Aisling presenting. We'll have JD at Cheltenham, Ronan O'Gara talking rugby, Jess McFadden on the Formula 1 and much more as well. Before we go, Jim Crawford announced his under-21 squad. We had an under-20 or an under-19 team that was named going to play the Irish amateur side. Obafemi's not in the squad, right? And when it was announced, and before Jim Crawford had done his press conference, we just all assumed that he'd been left out because he's going to be in the senior squad, because he's obviously been doing quite well recently on loan at Swansea. We're not quite sure if they approached him to join the under-21 squad, or if there's an older agreement in place / rejection where Obafemi said, look, I see myself as a senior international at this stage. I've been in the senior squad. I don't want to go back into the under-21 squad.
I don't know where to start. What question you asked me? Sorry.
Should Obafemi be in the senior squad? Is he good enough at the moment?
Haven't seen him play what he's been on loan at Swansea. Obviously, that's heavily dependent on who's available. Adam Mead is obviously out of the senior squad. Troy Partis getting games, scoring a few goals recently at Encame Dons. on the outside looking in, I wouldn't say automatically, from what I've read during his time at Swansea, he
took a while to get it going.
It's a necessity. He has to be in the squad. It's down to the manager's discretion. You just have to respect it. Whether it's Jim Crawford, I don't understand this.
He's hit a purple patch over the last. Now he scored twice, so it's 4 goals in 7 games. Last 7 games, I think.
Yeah. Well, look, you picked your turn up and you play. As simple as that.
Okay, so
if you don't, you double down. Make sure the next squad's announced you're in there. Keep repeating what you're doing. Keep producing those performances. Keep scoring goals. And I'm sure he'll force his way into that.
Jim Crawford's point was he should have showed up to the under-21s because he wasn't playing at that stage for Southampton, and actually that would have given him a bit of game time. But when he said not that he wasn't going to be part of that he respected that.
Obafemi said he didn't want to be part of the
under-21 squad. Yeah,
he said that. He came out publicly and said that.
Well, his agent told Jim Crawford, who it is now in the public domain. Yeah.
Well, that's not going to clearly that's not going to go in his favour. That gives you a bit of a window in terms of the kind of the mentality of the player to a degree. And obviously that's going to influence managers in terms of whether they bring that kind of personality into it, whether you want to bring that actually personality into a dressing room, let alone about his individual qualities. That's what I suggest. I didn't realise he'd come out and said that. I find that quite unbelievable, to be honest with you. That's the case. I don't want to be considered for the 21s. I feel as if I'm deserving of a place in the senior squad. If that's what you're saying, well then.
Given he's been capped at senior level, is there would you understand his point of view, given he is a senior international, he's got a cap?
No, I don't, because I think there was an argument. A couple of the younger lads, 21s, were involved in the senior squads the last few, and there was a couple of big 21 games, and there was an argument for dropping a couple of the lads. Queven Keller actually in goal. I think Jason Knight might have been another. There was a couple of the players, key players, actually dropping them back into the 21s. I think qualification was still up in the air then. So for me that's a strong argument. In fact, I would have thought as a player I'd be itching maybe to get back in there, the opportunity to go to a major tournament, another 21 major tournament with the country. That'd be a huge motivation for me. So it's not as simple as it's an embarrassment. You're embarrassing me by asking me to go and play with the 21s.
Sometimes 19, 20, 21 year olds don't have that maturity to understand that.
Well, you better find it then, otherwise you're going to find a set position that Obafemi is in there, and he's going to find himself on the outside looking in.
I guess one thing that we maybe don't know is that maybe there's been conversations that have happened that Obafemi's pretty confident he'll get into the next senior squad. As you say, Eid is injured and Obafemi's in his best vein of form in a couple of years.
It'll be interesting to see, won't it?
That's down to the manager to kind of marry all those things up. But you'd be foolish, you'd be naive to think that when Stephen Kenny picks his squad, he's putting that group of players together in terms of how important the mood is and the camaraderie in the dressing room, the group dynamic. That the only thing he factors in is the individual qualities of any player. I don't think any manager does that. So that's all I'd say in relation to that.
It will be interesting to see. Shane Long has played well off the bench, has been getting games, has scored a goal, so maybe he comes back into the reckoning. Aaron Connolly scored last night. Is he in the reckoning? They all fancy their chances.
I think they are in the reckoning. Aaron looks as if he's getting more minutes. He's scoring a few goals. Aaron's in a position where he's learning the game as well, probably similar to Obafemi as Swansea. Young players maturing, getting games minutes under their belt, and actually understanding their role in the team, and actually learning the game, and hopefully he'll come back stronger. There's talent there with Aaron. Just looks to me somebody just needs to learn the game, really become better in that respect. But yeah, Callum Robinson, obviously Will King came in the last squad, didn't he? Obaselli at Rotherham, I thought done really well the last game. Yeah, he looked a real threat high up the pitch. So yeah, there's a couple of options there around the periphery. Yeah.
All right, Kenny, good stuff. Thanks a million. Happy St Patrick's Day to you.
Give us a tip.
Enjoy the parade.
Give me a tip. Owen, give me a tip for the Gold Cup. If I'm finished with John, finish with him.
Well, he's getting his tips.
Give me one.
I'll be following John, you see.
Go with Galvin.
Is he going to be giving you his tips, or is he going to be giving you his which tips is he going to be giving you? Have we?
Go with Galvin.
I'm going to slide into.
Are you confused now? Are you going to insist he gives you?
And introduce myself? Be like, John, I desperately need some money, please.
Right, that is the first part of today's OTB AM. The final part is going to be Brian O'Driscoll in studio with Joe last night. Take care.
Now, we've loads to talk about. Brian O'Driscoll in studio. Great to have you in. You're very welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
You were at Twickenham on Saturday. Everybody there says that it was an extraordinary atmosphere, an extraordinary sense of occasion.
Yeah, certainly it felt that we were in the studio, so you've got to get through a pane of glass to appreciate it. But it was loud, and you could hear. I was sitting between Clive Woodward and Johnny Wilkson, and Clive made reference to it was as loud as he's remembered it from the good old days.
With a tear rolling down his eye.
Yes, it's sick that he had to share one of his favourite atmospheres. But no, it did feel raucous. It did feel loud, and that, you know, with all of the penalties that were coming England's way and the way they were winding the crowd up and celebrating every penalty like it was a score in itself or a match win in itself, just heightens the crowd's you know, enthusiasm for getting behind them. So, you know, for everyone that was annoyed at, and listen, don't get me wrong, I watched it again today and I was annoyed at all of the celebrations of it, but people are very short married as well. You know, think about Tyke Furlong's big pump of the fist last year, and in the similar fixture, so back in the Aviva. So it happens. It comes in roundabouts, and you have to do what you got to do to really get the momentum swinging in your favour, particularly if you're a man down.
Yeah, they're not totally empty gestures. You ride that momentum. You're emotional. Ireland have had many a performance based on that.
Forwards and scrum play is all about one-upmanship and about getting the mental edge after the physical edge and reinforcing it. And that's why you see so many of them feel so pumped after a big scrum penalty, because it's bigger than just that moment.
Yeah.
It's a psychological battle that front rowers and front five need against their opposite man that really fuels the rest of their performance as well, and it can act as a real catalyst because it's significant. Penalty is a shot at goal, or it's 40-50 metres down the park in a, you know, relieving pressure or setting up a great line-out opportunity. So it does it's significant beside just that very split moment itself.
On the scrum, we had Fiona Hayes on yesterday. She broke it down brilliantly for us about what was going wrong and what was illegal. What's your scrum knowledge? Would you have looked at that, say, across those 80 minutes in real time and thought to yourself, there's something odd here?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at some of the experience of the players, the reputations, and how frustrated some were. In particular, Tyke Furlong, he was at pains to tell the referee that he just couldn't understand his decisions, and obviously he felt there was huge illegality going in. I have to say, in real time, it was very hard to call it. I thought, having watched it back, I thought Sinclair was pretty square, and if anything, once or twice I thought Cian Healy was under pressure and ended up caving in a bit. On the other side, I don't know, to be honest with you. I have to leave it to, that's not my area of expertise. Genge will tell you one thing and Furlong will tell you another. So I leave it to Fiona Hayes and everyone else. But looking at it, I think what you're always looking for, if something does, if a scrum does turn, it's who is the squarest team while that's happening. And I think for a couple of times, certainly the early penalties that England got, they felt as though they were the squarest team and that they weren't breaking up. They weren't as a unit, as a five-man unit in particular.
Yeah.
And if you look at the spacings of the second row as well, where they were, kind of those gaps between them, you know that they're under huge pressure then.
Yes. Do me a favour and move your microphone the other side of that notebook of yours and we'll get those dulcet tones.
Sorry about that. Okay.
If you're captain in that scenario, i.e. Johnny Sexton, and you're also looking at the scrum and you're not too sure what the hell is going on, but you need to try and reason with the referee in some way, there's not much you can do really, or because they did seem to have a few consultations with the referee. It didn't make much difference. And then somebody like Nigel Owens is writing on the Sunday saying, well, that's a streak of 6 consecutive penalties to England at the scrum could have been 4-2 if not 3-3. So something was really going awry. It seemed it was very difficult on the field for Furlong or for Sexton to try and communicate with Raynal.
Yeah, and listen, that's where your diplomacy really comes to the fore about trying to get decisions in other areas. If he goes in with a mindset or feels as though his decision making is swayed by an action he's seen, you've got to go and try and change or pivot or just modify something, and all you can do then is bring to his attention what you feel the issue is, and once he knows about it, he's going to look out for it the next time. And unfortunately, that only sometimes happens after you can commit 2 or 3 penalties that with the same infringement in inverted commas. So it's a difficult thing to manage as a captain. It is, or as a pack leader, because sometimes some referees, they're not for changing, and you just have to you've got to tough it out, and you've got to find a way to stay in that fight. You've got to think about getting your technique spot on, and just all you can do is bring it to his attention, and if he's not going to bite on it, what can you do?
It led to such an absorbing game because on the one hand, a scrum that dominant, that team is going to win, and yet on the other hand, they're down to 14 men. They're also at home, which is a big advantage, but then Ireland's attack is much better. So you've got all of these different weights and counterweights, and it kept us guessing a touch. Generally, I presume... well, you've been in that instance where Ireland's scrum at Twickenham went to pot per Tom Court, thrown to the wolves almost.
I was thankfully watching from a bar in New York at the time, so I was rather relieved.
But there's not much you can do generally.
There really isn't, and particularly when it's your sub, has come on because you've got an injury and there's nothing. You can't look to the bench. You look to the bench and it's empty, and it's very frustrating because then with every there's a tentativeness. It happened to us in the Heineken Cup in 2012 against Northampton, that first half, getting destroyed in the scrum, and it makes you a bit more anxious on the ball. You knock the ball on, oh no, the nervousness around ball handling because your scrum is sprinting backwards, and then all of a sudden do you realise the knock-on effect to each error is momentum to the opposition, and just shows in the second half of that game we turned around and we got the better of them in the scrum, and that was the turning point. So it's still such a huge aspect of the game, and like it or loathe it, it's great that it can be determined by something that is very specific to a group of individuals. It's back to here I am talking about, I have 15 years experience of playing in the game, 8 as an analyst, and I think I know some things in the scrum, but I just couldn't properly pull apart what the nuances or what the difference was that Ellis Genge was specifically doing on Furlong. Was he boring in? Were they both trying to target the tight end? Is that not the norm? It's not a skill set that I've had to really get into. As an analyst, I want to know a little bit more, but it feels as though you could look at the same scrum a few times and you could get a couple of different outcomes, and that's to do with referee interpretation as well.
Something you would have a good feel for is Ireland's approach against 14 men in possession. So there were 17 turnovers, which is high, and at times, and there are various examples of Ireland forcing the pass and throwing an offload when, after a 20-metre break inside opposition 22, just hit the deck, and this will be a numbers game and Ireland will score a try. So there were definitely accusations of, certainly sloppiness, but also poor decision-making. And I've heard the counter-argument is, if we're going to really embrace this style of play, and if we're going to really encourage offloads, then at times we are going to see Ireland force it. And we can't get too pent up about that because in the end, they still wear a team down. They still get 4 tries.
Yeah, I think there are two interesting arguments. I think, first of all, let's go second one first. I agree. I think we want to play that game and we want to be an offloading team, and we want to, from a public point of view, we want to be entertained, but they've more chance against the best teams in the world if they play this style, change the point of contact. That's the reality of it, knock it into an arm wrestle. That said, I thought the timing of some of their offloads was wrong, and you offload pre or post contact. They were offloading a few times in the middle of contact, and there was a really good example of Furlong. I wrote a few of them down. There was one from Lowe, there was one from Byrne, there was one from Furlong, all in close to try scoring opportunities, 5 or 6 metres out. Furlong's when he got whacked, big shot, but he, when he felt the impact of it, he was bracing himself for the offload. He just had to tuck that. Another phase. If you get hit in a big way, a man like him, not expecting it, going to properly knock him off his stride, even though he's a great ball handler, just tuck it and plays for the next for the next phase. Byrne likewise, Marchant did a great job on him and just managed to scrag his hand, tried to get an offload to Henderson. Just one more phase, and it felt like there was lots of times we were talking about one more phase. The first half, I thought they kicked the ball away a couple of times when they needn't do it. For the Conan try, I think it was the only time in the whole game that they got above 10 phases.
Yeah,
that's unheard of.
1 minute 54 seconds, that passage.
That's unheard of for this Irish team, to only, against 14 men, think about it. What do you want to do? You want to tire them, you want to hold them, you want to, make them, scrummage first of all, and then bring those front rowers through another a dozen or so phases, and you're going to find a mismatch. You're going to get Hugo Keenan or Gary Ringrose on one of the bigger units who are going to be fatigued and not going to be, as clear and concise as they would have been in other parts of the game. So
why do you think they did it? Why do you think they did it?
I don't know. Like, there was, once Conway kicked it away, another time Sexton, and they made a break up that right side with that great Keenan offload. Conway told them to chip and chase, but like there's 3 or 4 of them in support. Like, hold on to it, just bring them through the phases. And another day the bounce of the ball maybe sits up for Conway and he might score a try, but we're, all we can call is what we saw, and you thought, hold on to it. They were so good with ball in hand. That's the other thing. Why kick it away? Why give the opposition a chance to get the ball back? Just take ownership of it, be miserly with possession, and force them into making those 50-50 calls, whether you don't know it's front door, back door. And Ireland's shape looked great. It did at times. Just felt the last bit of cutting edge was missing, and it was at times offload quality, poor pass quality once or twice. Even on that pivot, Tadhg Byrne threw a couple of passes down on the ground behind that they recovered well and didn't lose possession. But small things like that goes to hand, and you create one more chance out wide. And the more times you create, the more chance you have of breaking any team.
So did you come away then kind of, because some people did come away frustrated, even though we're talking record-winning margin at Twickenham, and I suspect it's that area that in particular frustrated them, and a few sloppy penalties, I'm sure, as well. Did you come away saying, oh, come on, we got to be much better and sharper there? Or do you see it as, look, it's positive, they're having a real cut in Twickenham?
At the time, frustrated. Yeah. I'm glad the game and the shape that they tried what they did try, and just inaccurate. And I think it's easy to fix that inaccuracy. That's the thing. I look at that, countering some of England's shape. They do something similar, but their lines of running just not where we are, which is... which would be frustrating from their perspective. But watching the game today, Jamie George once or twice ran pretty pathetic lines. You're not going to stick any defender, whereas he runs hard. At one occasion, Doris has to bite in. Marcus Smith is around the corner. He made a break against Wales, got an offload there 20 metres up the pitch. As a result of George's line, Doris sees it, sure, he's not getting it, bounces out, pushes every defender out, and they're able to use the touchline as an additional defender. They're the margins. One person not doing their job has this massive knock-on effect to them not getting the line break that they should have done if everyone does what they're expected to do. So from an Irish perspective, it did feel as though, and get everything perfect, but it did feel as though we continued to go in the right way in what we're trying to achieve, of making people, forcing them into making decisions in fractions of a second.
Yes, and it's good that Ireland are having the bravery to do that at Twickenham and not just at home against Wales,
And it's challenging against 14 men. It is. There's a galvanising effect. That's a home crowd. Our penalty count was frustrating. That
15 penalties.
Besides the scrum penalties, there was a couple of really, really silly ones, and I don't have to go naming names, but there was one before the one we scored the try, and then the one we gave them just before half time, slapped an arm in a ruck, to give them, to make it 15-9 versus 15-6. Like, that's significant. Go in 15-6. We've just taken the momentum, and now we've just given them something back. So
well, even after when Doris went over for that try, which was ultimately disallowed, I think it crossed everyone's mind, we're going to win 100-0.
I thought it was going to be 25-0 or 25-point differential at that stage. I was like, this could be a rout.
Yes, and so that probably built big expectations, which then when they weren't met added to the frustration. But just looking at the game back again today, it was suddenly on about 25 minutes when England win their first scrum after Ireland had won the first one. Then Ian Henderson 2-3 minutes later gives away a very needless penalty, and Ireland get away with it. And then Johnny Sexton gets ahead of the kicker, gives away a penalty. Donald Lennon is saying, that is criminal. And suddenly it's 8 points to 6 from thinking we were 15-0 and going to kick on. And around that half hour, 35-minute period, the atmosphere changed, and there was a sense, England have something to get hold of here.
How many tries have England scored in the Six Nations?
2.
How many teams have they cut open? How many try-scoring opportunities have they created? So few. What did they do against Wales? Just kicked their goals, took advantage of penalties. And penalties do come from squeezing the opposition and forcing them into making bad decisions. But God, they'll be very frustrated by some of the penalties they gave up. Yeah. That's just access into the game where You know, particularly if you're in possession or you're in total control. And by the way, this Irish defence has conceded 3 tries in the Six Nations. One of them was an intercept. And 2 against a very, very potent French attack.
Yeah, one of them forward, so we're now down to 1.
There you go, right? So, like, our defence is to be backed. And that's why those silly errors, those holding a guy's hand in a ruck, when there's no major pressure, I don't mind doing that when you're definitely going to score. They're definitely going to score a try, and you feel you might get away without giving away a yellow card. There's good penalties to give away, but there was some really, really silly ones that would be very frustrating, and it gave England a leg up, leg up that they needed.
On England, Eddie Jones said afterwards, we want to be an old-fashioned England pack and a new-fashioned England attack. And the first part I could see.
Yeah.
On their attack, I mentioned these stats last night, so apologies for repetition, but just to get your thoughts on where they are. Metres carried, Ireland 555 to England's 214. Ireland had 192 passes. Ireland's passes is off the charts the last couple of months. England had 69 passes. Ireland had 143 runs. England had 59. And then just defenders beaten. Ireland 26, England 7, and 8 clean breaks to 1.
What were the offloads?
England weren't so bad on offloads, actually. I don't have them to hand. You asked me the one statistic I don't have, but they weren't horrific. But this new-fashioned England attack looks about as reductive and simplistic as it gets. I mean, I did say last night, if Eddie Jones didn't have this great body of work behind him at World Cups, there'd be major doubts now over where they're going or what they're working towards.
Well, he bought himself some time, didn't he, this week by talking about how everybody does catch up in the 3 months before Rugby World Cup. And I agree with him, they do. You've got the pre-season together, so you will have time to kind of bed in principles and kind of add to the foundations. And there should be more than foundations under him, but you know, the building blocks of what you're trying to where you're trying to get. It is, because you don't have much time together. So it does feel like he was buying himself time, but I would be pretty unimpressed with the English attack over the course, not just in that game, but over the course of the Six Nations.
Yeah.
Take Marcus Smith out of that. I know you're talking about, if you take any one star player, but like the couple of tries he scored, the line breaks he's had, it felt as though he's had to create a lot on his own rather than the shape itself creating it.
By the way, on there's just where we have gone with rugby, say, it feels in particular the last maybe decade, whereby Eddie Jones is coming off 5th place in the Six Nations last year. He's now openly talking to the English rugby public this year about how, I'm just trying a few things out and it's all about the World Cup. And even Ireland games, and we're as guilty of it in this studio as anyone. We have this amazing game at Twickenham, life to be lived, enjoy the moment, a thrilling game, and almost the first thing we say is, well, what does this mean about the World Cup? Like, we're in danger of distilling 4 years down to just World Cup.
Are we not now an obsessed nation around Rugby World Cup?
But I don't like Jones almost
that's not just
giving away.
But that's not just you.
No, it's not just me. It's actually, I'm including Eddie Jones. Like, Eddie Jones kind of turning around to the English public and saying, after our 5th place last year in the Six Nations, and this is an experimental Six Nations, like, we've got to be careful here, or we're going to reduce the Six Nations to, like, the FA Cup disappears, and it's a different parallel. But we need to keep the importance of these tournaments. Otherwise, there's no point watching rugby except for a month every 4 years. Because nothing else seems to matter the way we're going on.
Yeah, they're just words, though, aren't they?
Well, I hope so. But then I look at England,
because
I don't like Jones'
we all know that. Yeah, we all know that the Six Nations is still, the pinnacle global tournament outside Rugby World Cup. Like that's why we got the World Cup winners trying to get into it, right? So they're trying to bail from. Arguably, well, the best team in the world comes into the best team in the world more often than not. Yeah. One of the best teams, 2 double World Cup winner, and so I don't worry about where the Six Nations is going to be, because
I just feel it's in World Cup warm-up territory very soon if we keep going along this route.
They're just words. I feel as though it's what we as supporters and fans and pundits and analysts make of it, rather than necessarily just one coach. And listen, it's a foreign coach coming in, and maybe he doesn't see it like we've always treated it. He hasn't grown up with it. So maybe he doesn't feel the need to have the same respect for the yearly event that is Six Nations, that he sees it as climbing blocks to get to this World Cup. And that's may very well be what he sees it as. But I'd be pretty confident that he's not going to be there in 2024 and thereafter. So, like, I think we have to take an awful lot of what we hear from Eddie Jones with a pinch of salt when he says good things about us, or when he says bad things about us, or when he says anything about our prized possession, the prize cow. Like, let's not stress ourselves too much. We know what it is. We know it's great. We've got a weekend coming next weekend where 2 of the 3 games are going to be significant, where you're going to have hopefully one team in the lead and then another team trying to take that lead.
Yeah. The 50-22 is quickly becoming everybody's favourite rugby law. I was about to say rule there. Law. It's worked a plum, hasn't it?
Well, if you look at it as well, if you look at the first try, the James Lowe try, Marcus Smith is in the backfield and he's covering the touchline back there, and he's right, like he's almost in the 5 metre channel, because now that's where you have to be. And we see so many more kicks down the middle now because that's where the space is. Everyone's marshalling the 15s, so naturally if you want to kick the ball, you want to hit grass, that's the only spot that you're going to actually land it. But as a result of that 50-22, there's such knock-on effects to the positional sense of where those guys are, and he's worried about giving that away. And where Ireland strike from is I think it's just inside their own half, and then they unlocked them. And if you're critical, he could have closed the gate maybe a little bit early, but just seemed a little bit too easy for Ireland. But there's small little aspects to that 50-20 that impact the positional sense in tries as well as just kicks.
OTB AM. With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.